All right, 517 ICL, Blue Valley, Wednesday, September 25th, 2024, for the candidate forum.
Can you figure it out?
Let me try this. Probably.
It's been a frustrating tour.
But not by himself, I'm not gonna go out
Next week, I'll make sure to you again, Billy. Aren't you
Me
getting tired
again.
of us?
I've got nothing else
No?
to do.
Good. Glad to see you.
Do I know you from somewhere else other than the paper?
No. We just go literally way back. 2018.
Yeah.
We've known each other a
You
long
used to
time.
cover Merriam, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Merriam, Mission, and Shawnee were my first cities when I was a reporter. And then I deleted Merriam and Mission and added Lenexa and DeSoto School District when we hired Juliana because she took over Merriam. Yeah.
So Merriam wasn't your favorite then?
Oh no, it was one of my favorites. Merriam and Mission were my favorite cities because I like the small town feel.
Yeah.
Shawnee and Lenexa, there's like a lot going on. So I felt like, oh, I can't catch everything. I felt like I was missing stuff.
Did you stay till 2:30 at the Lenexa thing?
No, I had a baby to feed.
Oh.
I just got back from maternity, so no. But yeah, you ended up.
I did.
Yeah, because I ran into you there, and you found a seat, right?
Eventually, when people started to filter out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Originally, one of the police told me there's no seats available, and I'm looking around. I'm like, I see like 4 or 5, but I'm not going to argue, so I just went back out.
Well, because some seats
But-
were reserved.
Oh.
So
Yeah.
I feel really bad because they reserved one for me, and I couldn't. I had the baby.
Yeah. After the first recess, I think probably 100 people left, so I found a spot and cozied in.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Do you want one in here? Are there multiple? We got 2 in there. I was gonna say, if there's like a stool or something, you could have by the door.
Can you just probably cut out of my phone?
This will be in my pictures.
I'll put it right here. How are you feeling? Oh, you have water?
What? Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Oh, you did? That's good.
Yeah, no, it's
That's good. What's going on?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
But after next year, I'm gonna try 2 times. At least that first question. 96.
Marketing's like, you
And
can't think so.
I can not do it.
Never dropped off my passport.
Fine. That's fine. I think it was hard.
No, I was just said, so it should just be go live now, we're
Okay.
the different camera and go
So far,
That was really what it should look like. I mean, you should be seeing.
Yeah, I've been lucky.
Yeah, he's very.
See how these back-to-back ones go. So you go on.
That loud.
Right, louder. Gotta feel like walking.
I don't think this matters. No, that's perfect. I'm gonna fix that. That was how loud it was with the other one, but it's a problem. Which one is it? Which one is it? It's too loud. I want it lower. I don't need it in my thing. There. Ah.
Okay. Thank you so much for coming, for leading off tonight. Leave after this or stay there. The microphones are not plugged into an internal system, so when you speak into it, you will not feel like you're projected. This is a live stream. If you want to sit like maybe scoot a little bit forward, this is a good distance. You don't need to keep in mind, you don't need to keep back away.
Oh, yes, yeah.
You won't be hurting.
Okay.
But that's a good distance.
I will do my best.
You won't hear yourself in the room. That's by design. It's not right.
Sure.
Yeah.
Loud enough. Yeah.
As I explained in the email, opening statements, you should all get the same questions. The need or opportunity for rebuttal, which means you can refer that. My issue is 3 different forms, so we're trying to cycle through as many questions as possible. Send it back and forth, but if I see the need for a rebuttal, I might hold your response in a second.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that I got a few scripted questions. We'll take questions from the audience, immediately to me. They're gonna write it down in the index card, so they'll come up. So probably a few questions from me, and then we'll take a few questions from the audience. Decide who goes first.
Are you taking notes or questions for me to ask?
Still thinking of which one to put on there. Yeah.
I'm taking questions, by the way. I will make my round.
So you'll go first on opening statements. That just means opening statements. And you'll flip back and forth. Okay, turn going first. That's just all right, thank you so much for being here.
You break those system? Partners. Okay.
Good evening, folks. Just a quick note logistically, you see microphones up here. They are not plugged into a PA system, so when you hear me or you see me and can't speak in the microphone, you are not going to hear it in the room. That is meant for the live stream. This room is small enough that we can project. Our PA system gets kind of walking small room, so just to avoid that. So just to let you know, when you see us start talking into microphones and you don't hear us, over the speakers, it's not you, it's us. That's for the live stream. We're going to get started in just about a minute or so. Thanks for being here.
This is good for Carrie. Hey, can you make sure to give that to Carrie afterwards?
Yeah. All right, well, good evening and welcome to this candidate forum hosted by the Johnson County Post, featuring candidates vying for Kansas Senate District 35. This is the first of three back-to-back-to-back forums we're going to do tonight for Kansas Senate and House districts generally in the southern Overland Park, Leawood, kind of eastern, southeastern Olathe area. We're going to be binging state house districts tonight. 3 straight forums, so glad that you could be here for this first one. My name is Kyle Palmer. I'm the editor of the Johnson County Post, and I'm honored to be the moderator for this forum and the 2 that will follow after it. We consider events like this our bread and butter. We've hosted such forums nearly every year since the Post's founding almost 15 years ago. They allow our readers and residents of Johnson County direct access to the people who would hold elected office and govern your communities. And the Post prides itself on giving you fact-based, informative coverage of your local communities that you can't find anywhere else. And local elections are a perfect time to demonstrate that service. So if you already subscribe to the Post, thank you so much. It is your support that allows us to do events like this. If you do not currently subscribe, but maybe you watch this event tonight online or in person and like what you see, you can go to johnsoncountypost.com and sign up for the first 3 months for just $1 and test us out. There's also a sign outside with a QR code. You can scan it before you leave. And again, test us out for just $1. Full price after that 3 months. If you like us, you can stick with us. If not, you can move on. But that's at johnsoncountypost.com. A big thanks to Johnson County Library, who's co-sponsoring this event tonight at Blue Valley Library in Overland Park. As they did last year, Johnson County Library is helping us put on 8 nights of forums. We've already done 1, so 6 nights after this, between now and when early voting starts on October 18th. We want to thank the folks at the library for all their help and support. As I said in the room, we're also live streaming this event tonight on the Post Facebook page, as we plan to do with the other forums we have scheduled. This forum in its entirety will be archived at our Facebook page so that voters can watch it at any point as they prepare to cast their ballots up to and on November 5th. And of course, I also want to thank the candidates, Jason Anderson and TJ Rose, who will introduce themselves shortly. Running for office is time-consuming and labor-intensive, and we thank you for taking a little bit out of your time on a Wednesday night to inform the voters about your positions on the issues that matter to them. I've already told the candidates, but let's briefly lay out the format for this forum, both this one and the 2 that will follow if you stick around. Again, this is for Kansas Senate District 35. This is new to Johnson County after redistricting in 2022, so there's no incumbent in this seat. Covers parts of Olathe, Overland Park, a small piece of Lenexa, runs generally from College Boulevard to the county line with Miami County, and then between Lackman Road and Antioch. If you have questions about whether you live in this district, you can go to jocoelection.org and find all the maps for every state house and state board of education and county commission district. But this is Senate District 35. Each candidate will get a chance to briefly make an opening statement for 1 minute each. Following that, we'll ask them a series of questions based in part on reader input. I have a few scripted questions based on those reader feedback that we got from email. And then as well, if you're in the room, you might have seen an index card on your seat. If you have a question you want to ask these candidates, write it down on that index card. Leah Wonkum is walking around the room. She can collect those and pass those to me. And if we see cards, questions that have overriding themes, hit upon the same topics, we might try to ask them before we leave tonight. So some of my questions and some of your questions as well. After all that, they're going to get closing statements at the end, another minute to say goodbye and give one final message to the voters. Again, for candidates, you get warnings. Oh, so the card's right there. So 30-second warning is yellow. That just means 30 seconds left in your time. Red means your time is up. That's a courtesy just to let you know to wrap up your thoughts. And Kaylee will be doing that as well as manning the live stream and the microphones as well. So I also want to thank Kaylee McLaughlin behind the scenes, helping with the live stream, and Andrew Dogg running the cameras. And I also mentioned Leah taking questions, taking pictures as well. So we've got 3 forms tonight, so we want to get right to it. So let's give these candidates in Senate District 35 a chance to introduce themselves. We flipped a coin, and so TJ Rose will go first. You each get 1 minute to make an opening statement, starting with TJ Rose.
All right, Kyle, thank you very much for putting this on, and Jason, thank you for being here. Thank you all. Good evening. My name is TJ Rose. I'm running for Kansas State Senate in District 35 to make Kansas the best state in the nation to pursue the American dream through lower taxes, lower crime rates, and higher student achievement at our schools so that our businesses and our families can thrive. A few months ago, I was talking to a friend who works in the pharmaceutical industry, and he was telling me that every large pharmaceutical company has a manufacturing plant, a major manufacturing plant in Ireland and in Singapore. The reason for this is that Ireland and Singapore have a highly skilled workforce, especially in STEM, and they have a business-friendly environment, low taxes and low regulations. So pharmaceutical companies choose to have large manufacturing plants in Ireland and Singapore. And hearing this made me think that that would be a great thing, a great vision for the state of Kansas. What if Kansas was known nationally as having a highly skilled, highly educated workforce and a business-friendly environment with low taxes and low regulations, so that businesses chose to come here so that your business could thrive and your family can thrive?
You can wrap that thought up with the next question I'm going to ask you guys. I'm sure you can continue on that theme. We'll give you just a chance to introduce yourselves. We'll move it down to Jason Anderson now for your opening statement. 1 minute.
Thank you. Again, my name is Jason Anderson. I'm also running for state senate here in 35. I am an engineer and a technology guy by training. I've worked in a wide range of industries. Like many of you, I moved here to Johnson County with my family for 3 things: for the amazing public school systems that we have here, for the thriving business environments and opportunities we find ourselves with professionally, and the quality of life that comes with all of the infrastructure and resources and amenities that are fed by the tax revenues driven by those 3 things. That flywheel is why Johnson County has been so prosperous and successful for a generation. I see the role of the state senate in this position in particular as being to protect that flywheel and to continue to find ways to reinvest, particularly in our schools, to provide the talent and workforce that we need to be able to sustain all the other things that make us a great place to live.
Thank you both for your opening statements. I'm going to ask a first question that allows you a chance maybe to expound on some of the themes you touched upon in your opening statement, kind of a warm-up question, as it were. Give you 90 seconds for this, and we'll start with Jason here. We'll flip-flop back and forth who goes first. So we're holding forums for dozens of state house districts this fall. This particular district, Senate District 35, I kind of laid out the boundaries earlier. What do you see as the biggest priority or need for residents in this district that you want to represent? Jason Anderson, 90 seconds.
So I usually hear 2 things when meeting with folks at the doors. The first thing I'll hear about is our public school system and the need to continue to fully fund both the base funding for the schools as well as to meet the 92% obligation that we have for funding special education. The reason that's so important is even though we have continued to invest in SPED, we're about $100 million short and change at the state level. And so when you don't provide all of those resources to the school districts, that money still has to be paid from somewhere. So what ends up happening is funds get transferred out of salaries, out of textbook funds, out of other resources. And so when you start having problems with bus routes, for example, it's because we've paid money into sped for these other things, right? The other thing that comes up in door conversations is usually property taxes. That's something that we've made some progress on earlier in this year. We still have a ways to go there. The challenge is with the rate of inflation that we saw in property valuations, there's only so far we can probably go on the property tax side of things to pull that back. But there's other areas of the tax plan overall at the state level, such as vehicle tax and other parts of the income tax, where I think we can begin to make some more progress to return some of the surplus at the state budget level back to individual households and businesses.
Same question over to TJ Rose for Senate District 35. What do you see as the biggest priority for this district that you want to represent?
Overall, I'd say the biggest priority is I've talked to voters, and I've talked to a whole lot of voters. I've gone to over 9,000 doors in the last several months, talking to voters, hearing what they have to say. And I would say overall, the #1 priority for voters in District 35 is preserving our Johnson County way of life. Through low taxes, low crime rates, and high student achievement at our school, that is what I hear time and time again, is they want their life preserved, and they want their kids to have even more opportunities than what they have had to pursue the American dream. I believe that it's Republican principles that built Johnson County, the low taxes, the low crime rates, the high student achievement at schools, and not Democrat principles, which tend to result in higher taxes, higher crime rates, and lower student achievement at our schools. I will support policies that preserve the Johnson County way of life and give our kids even more opportunity than you and I have had.
We'll jump into some issues, and we've got 2 more forms after this, so we're going to dive right in after that kind of warm-up question. But you presented yourselves and what your priorities are, what you believe the priorities for this Senate district are. So we'll get to some questions that have been spurred on by readers. And so many readers, frankly, still use the 2020 election as kind of a litmus test for them for deciding who they're going to vote for. And so we got a lot of versions of this question. This is verbatim from a reader who sent this by email. Quote, I would like to know their stand on voter fraud, and do they believe the 2020 presidential election was stolen from Donald Trump? I have a couple follow-up questions after that, but this is 1 minute for both of you. Order falls to TJ Rose first, so 1 minute on this question. Voter fraud, and do you believe the 2020 election was stolen from Donald Trump?
Okay. I believe that President Joe Biden is our president, and as a state senator, I am focused on making sure that every legal vote is easily cast, and that every citizen of Kansas has confidence in the result of our elections. As Americans, we're blessed to live in a constitutional republic and to have democratic elections, and I will support democratic elections so that it is easy for every legal vote to be cast and that everybody has confidence in the results.
Do you trust Kansas elections and deem them fair? Why,
Yes.
why not? Yeah. Why not?
There have been several challenges to Kansas elections, and they have never reaped any results, so I think that Kansas has a good election process. When I go vote, I think it's a common sense process, and I think that Kansas has a good election process, and I will, as a state senator, I'll make sure that we always have a good election process.
Over to Jason Anderson, the question, do you believe any of the things about voter fraud and that the 2020 presidential election was stolen from Donald Trump? Your position on that one?
I do not believe that the election was stolen. I actually personally worked as a poll worker during the 2020 election, and so I know from my own personal experience how that process works obviously just at one polling location, so I can't speak to the entirety of the state. But it is a citizen-driven process. It is extremely transparent. It is very well documented. There are many opportunities throughout the state and the nation for anyone who has concerns to come in and observe how that process works. I did see a few cases where people would come in and they would have concerns. I think a lot of the challenge really is just about surfacing information to folks about how our votes being counted, how the machines work, those sorts of things. But no, I have no concerns about there having been any systemic fraud.
Yeah. We did get some questions from readers email about concerns about transparency in elections, asked if you support measures and not just you, but I mean in general, support measures to bring greater transparency into election systems. This reader brought up instances of laws guaranteeing public access to security footage, source code, log files. You worked as a poll worker, you just said it. So what do you would you support such measures? What do you think about such ideas?
I think there's a lot of value. There's a lot of value in many of those ideas. The devil's in the details as far as how easy or hard or expensive is it to implement those things, and so there is some balance there perhaps to consider. But I'm always in favor of what's the phrase? You know, the sunlight will clear away any infections, right? And so I do think that there are more things that we can share, but there's also a lot of information that is already available. Every single polling station, there is a paper trail that goes from those machines back to the county and back to the state. And so to the degree that you need new visibility into that, I'm not as versed as far as like what is actually published, but I do think that there's more we can do.
Philosophically, for both of you now, in general, do you want to make it easier for Kansans to vote, or do you think there should be any sort of restrictions or barriers to vote, and what would that be in your mind? I think you've just spoken for a little bit, so maybe we'll jump over to TJ Rose for this question. Philosophically, do you think it should be easier for Kansans to vote? Why or why not?
I think that, from what I know, it's easy for Kansans to vote. We have the drop boxes, we have mail-in voting. I will consider election legislation on a case-by-case basis, and if somebody comes up with an easier way to vote than we currently allow for, then I will consider it.
And back to Jason Anderson, the ease of voting in Kansas, how would you assess it?
I think it's pretty straightforward right now. The only things that you might see being done in other states that aren't being done here today, Oregon, for example, may have like statewide automatic mail ballots at having. Those are things that are maybe a little bit trickier to do right now, just because the Postal Service seems to be having some stability issues with turnaround time and delivery of mail. So I don't know that I would necessarily want to push for something like that. But by and large, I've not heard many complaints from people when I talk to them about the election process or how to go about voting. Maybe just a little bit more. So the one thing that has been challenged this year is just explaining to people who are their districts, right? This is a new boundary, and so there's a lot of folks that didn't even know they were in a new boundary, and probably experienced this as well. So having a way to make it easier to find out who is on your ballot, who is representing you during these transition years.
Thank you for your answer on that question. We do have a couple of audience questions about taxes, which is a topic I was going to ask about, so we'll just jump to that, and I believe the order falls to, I have to follow a question, but that started with Jason, so we'll start this question with TJ. Earlier this summer, lawmakers passed and Kansas Governor Laura Kelly signed into law a tax cut passage that slashes roughly $2.4 billion in property and income taxes over the next 3 years. That law also reduces state income tax brackets from 3 to 2 and eliminates the state tax on Social Security benefits, among other things. So do you think the most recent tax cut bill provides enough relief for Kansans? As one questioner in the room asked, are you pleased with these tax cuts? So you think it goes far enough? Why or why not? If elected, would you seek more tax cuts? And if so, what would that look like? TJ Rose, 1 minute.
As a state senator, I will support business-friendly policies, and I will work on reducing taxes and income and sales and property tax, because the states that have the lower taxes have a more thriving economy. Currently, Kansas is not competing very well against the surrounding states or the surrounding states because we have higher taxes. And the larger the government, the less freedom for the people. As a state senator, I will support your freedom, and I will support your economic prosperity, and I will always look for ways that we can reduce the tax burden on Kansas families and businesses.
Any specific, dollar amounts, any specific mechanisms that you have in mind to do that?
I think that we need to have a balanced tax structure between sales tax, property tax, and income tax, and reduce those three in synchronization with each other, rather than having one at 0% and then the others higher. I think we need to have a balanced tax structure.
The question to Jason Anderson, the tax cut bill that was passed this summer, signed into law. What do you think of that? Do you think the most recent, that bill provides enough relief for Kansans? Would you seek more tax cuts? What would be your position on taxes if elected?
I'm supportive of all the tax cuts that were passed last year. One of the challenging things, though, is many of those we haven't actually begun to experience yet at the store. So the grocery sales tax has not yet come into play. some of the tax cuts aren't actually being paid out until next year or until the end of this current tax year. And so when you think about what does the overall tax picture look like for the state, some of those we haven't paid for yet. And so when we think about what can we do again next time around, there may be a little bit of work we can do on property tax, but I think we have to also look at the other things that we would like to do, such as if we're fully funding special education, if we're fully funding schools, that money comes from that same budget surplus that would be used for property tax relief. And so I would like to see more happen on the property tax side. I haven't done the math deeply enough yet to know how far that could go, because I do think those other priorities are important.
A question that will be for both of you, but we'll start with Jason. It's on the same topic. We did get a number of questions from readers asking specifically about tax relief for seniors. The state does already offer some property tax rebate programs for low-income and disabled seniors, as well as veterans. And we do hear frequently from older Johnson counties living on fixed or retirement income worried about their rising property taxes and being able to stay in their home. So this is not just a state issue, of course, but is there anything more that the state can do to address this particular group of taxpayers? We'll start with Jason, 1 minute.
I do believe there is. I've seen in other states where there have been, for example, either age or disability triggered benefits that are related to rental tax credits. So if you are a retiree or a fixed income home and maybe you're not owning your property anymore, but you're starting to see secondary impact from inflation because the property tax is rising on that unit, and then that is being passed down into the rental rate on that unit. So there's things you can do there. I think the challenge with property tax reductions at a age-based threshold is you're gonna start having challenges with how equitable is that, and you're also gonna have challenges with how you reconcile that at the time that the house is sold down the road. But you might have a scenario where you could maybe defer some of that appreciation until the time that the house is sold.
Same question over to TJ Rose. Anything more the state can do to address particularly senior taxpayers who are worried about their rising property taxes if they're on fixed incomes especially?
Okay. Taxes in the state of Kansas ultimately are a spending issue. Since 2019, state spending from the general fund has grown from $12 billion a year up to $19 billion a year. If we are going to reduce taxes, we have to reduce spending. It is that simple. And you cannot come up with new ways to spend money and cut taxes. That is not the way it works. That is why I am for lower taxes, because I'm willing to make the state government more efficient, and I'm not going to spend money out of control like we have for the last 5 years.
Let's move on to another topic that we have 3 or 4 questions from, so I'm going to try to address it, maybe synthesize or at least ask one of these questions. It is about guns, gun safety, gun control, gun violence, however you want to frame that issue. One questioner in the room says school shootings are far too common, as is gun violence in general. What new laws, regulations, restrictions, if any, would you support regarding firearms? We'll start with TJ Rose, 1 minute. What new laws, that is the order, correct? TJ, go ahead. What new laws, regulations, restrictions would you support, if any, regarding firearms in Kansas? 1 minute.
Okay. I agree that school shootings are tragic. As a state senator on all issues, including gun violence, I will work with Democrats and nonprofits and all Kansans to come up with solutions. I think that at the same time, we need to maintain our constitutional rights and the ability of law-abiding citizens to defend themselves.
Now, Jason, I'll ask the same question to you, and then I have a couple follows for both of you. But the first question, new laws, regulations, restrictions, if any, would you support on firearms if elected?
Sure. So I'm also supportive of the Second Amendment. This is not a realistic scenario to think we're going to go and take away people's guns at home or impact their right to defend themselves. That said, I am also a multi-ban action gun sense candidate. And part of what that means is, are there other common sense ways and laws that we can implement based on best practices that we've seen in other states, such as gun storage laws, that we know have been able to reduce firearm deaths in the home. It is a leading cause of death among children, and it is a tragedy when that happens. I do think there's other things you can do related to perhaps accountability laws. We've seen this be particularly effective in some national stories in Wisconsin and others, where you can start to look at what is your civic or your civil liability in these situations. And there's also things we can look at with related to minimum age requirements for semi-automatic weapons.
So this a follow-up question for both of you, but we'll start with Jason. You alluded to some specific policies in your first response, but do you support background checks for gun purchases, red flag laws, safe gun storage laws? That litany of those laws that one questioner is asking about?
All of those, yes.
TJ Rose, same question to you. Background checks, red flag laws, safe gun storage laws, do you support such measures?
I think that we need to make sure that criminals do not bear arms. So I will support background checks to ensure that only law-abiding citizens are bearing arms, and other common sense legislation like that. I think it's important that law-abiding citizens are able to defend themselves. So any legislation will be in light of that and constitutional rights, while working with all Kansans to make sure that our schools are safe and our streets are safe. That is the ultimate objective.
Red flag laws and gun storage laws too? Your thoughts on those?
I think that in order for law-abiding citizens to be able to defend themselves, they need to have easy access to their guns in their homes.
We'll go on to another topic, and we'll start with TJ Rose on this one. We do have a couple of questions from the audience as well, but I was going to ask one too. So this question for both of you, 1 minute. Many readers pointed out in their questions to us via email when we asked a few weeks ago in the lead up to these forums, they pointed out that the 2022 statewide vote that rejected the Value Them Both amendment, which had the effect of further enshrining abortion rights in the state constitution, that the voters chose that, and the margins in Johnson County were even wider than they were in the state in general. As one reader put it, quote, "Our legislators going to pursue new laws going forward to restrict abortion access or preserve what Kansas voters decided in 2022. That's the way that reader framed it. So are you satisfied with the current laws and restrictions on abortion in Kansas? Do you think access should be expanded, or do you support new restrictions on abortion? And if so, what kind? So TJ Rose, we'll start with you.
The Kansas legislature has no authority to restrict abortion. The Supreme Court has ruled twice, including as recently as a month ago, and the voters spoke loudly and clearly with the Value Them Both in 2022. So the Kansas legislature has no authority to restrict abortion. Therefore, my focus in this election and why I'm running for Kansas State Senate is to make sure that we preserve our quality of life. Make sure that Kansas businesses and families can thrive through low taxes, low crime rates, and high student achievement at our schools.
Fair enough, but I will just ask a follow-up question. So if, let's say, legislation does come forward that does put some sort of new rule or restriction on abortion as it is legalized in Kansas now, would you vote for it?
This past legislative session, there was a bill that came up to ban abortion, and I would have voted no on that.
Question to Jason Anderson. Are you satisfied with the current laws and restrictions on abortion? Keeping in mind many readers point to that Value Them Both vote as a barometer for where the state is, at least the populace. Do you think access should be expanded? Do you think new restrictions should be passed? What say you, Jason Anderson?
I would agree, like many others, that you don't really want me or any other legislator in the middle of this discussion between you and your family and your priest or your pediatrician. Like none of those are places where I belong in the conversation, right? And so I am firmly supportive of the current legal status of the defense of access to abortion. I do think there's some attempts that have made it through in these past 2 years since the Vote No amendment that have managed to chip away further than was intended through that constitutional vote. And so I would be supportive of any legislation that was to loosen that a little bit. But I think you have to look at it case by case because it's a very tricky issue. And I get nervous when you start talking about things like specific ages at which point you might do this or that.
And just a follow-up question for you, of course, abortion opponents say there is a compelling state interest in protecting life. How do you balance the rights of women to make personal choices about their reproductive health with the rights of an unborn child? How do you consider that? How would you weigh that personally?
So I think that morality is a very difficult thing to legislate. And I think that it's a very inappropriate place for us as a society to have that conversation. That is not something where you're going to find unanimity on how do we all believe we should treat life and the beginning of life. And so I would go back to, that is not a topic that we should be debating in Topeka. And if it did come up for debate and there was an attempt to put in new restrictions, I would vote no against those restrictions.
And another question from the audience, kind of tied in with this topic. This will be the last one before we move on to a new topic. But for both of you, and we'll start with Jason, of course, tied up with this issue of abortion, for some readers are concerns about the state regarding other areas of reproductive health, including in vitro fertilization and birth control. So this one questioner in the audience asks, do you support unlimited access to IVF and birth control? What's your stance on these two areas, Jason?
I fully support access to IVF and other forms of birth control. It's, as I just said, as an issue that is not, like, I am not involved in the doctor's office. I should not be involved in that conversation, and neither should any of the rest of the legislator.
TJ Rose, a question to you. Do you support unlimited access to IVF and birth control?
Yes, I support unlimited access to IVF and birth control.
Oh, okay. The next question is from an audience member as well, and it gets to another topic, and so we'll ask both of you, and we'll start with TJ. That's the order. This questioner says, the Senate is notorious for being at odds with the House. Do you have ideas to address this rivalry or reduce friction and promote collaboration, either within the chamber that you would be in as well as in the other chamber with other lawmakers? So TJ Rose, we'll start with you, 1 minute.
Absolutely. As a state senator, I will work with everybody, whether they're in the House or the other party. I will listen to all my constituents and represent you well. When I've gone to the door and talked to voters, a common theme I've heard is that people want a statesman. And I'm proud to say that after filing 18 months ago or so to run for this office, I have run a positive campaign. It would be very easy for me to step foot right now in the Kansas legislature and work very well with Democrats, because I have not done anything negative in this campaign. It's been nothing but positive. I will do what's right for all Kansans, regardless of who gets the credit, as long as the people benefit. I don't care if another party gets the credit. I don't care if the House gets the credit. I'm doing this to help people, period. And I will definitely work well with the people, with the House of Representatives.
Jason Anderson, question to you. Do you have ideas on how to, be more collegial, address the rivalry, as this one questioner said, between the House and Senate? How would you reduce friction, promote collaboration? 1 minute.
It's a really interesting question, actually, because there's what you would say right now in a forum like this, in the campaign experience, right? There's the soundbite that might sound like, oh yes, that's what we want. And then there's the reality when you start a new job, right? And you've got 100 and change new people that you're beginning to work with. The Senate has an advantage in that it's only 40 people, right? And so you can get 40 people together in a room and you can try to organize some kind of conversation if you have to. The House is a much bigger, more diverse bunch, and so I understand why there may be some of that tension between the two. I'm very interested and motivated to find ways to work with folks both sides of the aisle, both chambers. I can't predict what that will actually be like. I don't think any of us can, really. But I think the desire is true, and we have to keep working at that. It's the only way that we're going to find any issues that we can actually find some kind of common ground, progress in Topeka, and get it across the finish line on both sides.
A question from the audience about education. We'll start with Jason on this one. New legislation is mandated. This is from a questioner in the audience. New legislation is mandated for school districts to show student growth. If they do not, funds could be taken away, will be taken away. How do you expect, this is from the question, how do you expect students to improve if you are taking away resources? Maybe framed another way, what's the balance between, holding schools accountable as well as trying to give them the resources they need in order to achieve those results? We'll start with Jason Anderson first, 1 minute.
So I'm not as familiar with the details of that specific legislation because it's not really kind of come into effect, right, in any kind of scale. I would agree, though, with the sentiment that if you are punishing schools for poor performance by removing resources from them, that starts a degrading of the entire process over time, and that then creates these opportunities for kind of picking kids off and having them transfer over into other districts or into non-public schools. So part of it, I worry, is more about a strategic plan of how do we erode the population in public schools in general. So I would rather not see penalties being put in place that are financial, but perhaps there's other things we can look at in terms of administrative oversight.
That question to TJ Rose, again, the questioner asked, how do you expect students to improve if you're taking away resources? But again, your thoughts on the balance between holding public schools accountable while also giving them the resources necessary in order to be able to succeed.
Yep. For over a year on my campaign website, it is clearly stated, and it still does today, that I will support fully funding public schools, including special education. So when you hear on the other side saying otherwise, it simply is not true. And I find it to be disappointing that voters are misinformed like that. So I'm fully committed to fully funding our public schools, including special education. I look forward to working with the superintendent of the school districts in District 35 and the leadership of the school districts to provide them everything they need to be successful. As a former teacher, I'm passionate about education. I understand very well what teachers are going through. I want teachers to love their jobs, and I want our students to be educated. We have a student achievement crisis in our state that we all need to work together to solve so that our kids can reach their fullest potential and our state can have a highly skilled and highly educated workforce.
A question for both of you that on this same topic came to us via email. Do you support measures that would allow the use of taxpayer dollars to go to private or religious schooling, whatever that may be, tax credits for scholarships, vouchers, if you want to frame it that way? Do you support measures that would allow the use of taxpayer dollars to go to private or religious schools? We'll start with TJ Rose, 1 minute.
Okay. As a teacher, I know that education is a three-legged stool. You have parents, you have students, you have teachers, and you have taxpayers who are funding it. In my opinion, a minute's pretty quick for this, by the way. In my opinion,
we did abortion earlier. Sorry.
In my opinion, all four parties are losing right now. You have students who are not learning. All too many students are scoring on level 1 of the state assessment. We have a teacher shortage because teachers are so frustrated, and we have taxpayers who are not earning a good return on their investment. The Democrat response to that is they have a computer model and they're so excited that it spat out the, hey, let's spend more money. I think that we need to put a little more deep thinking into the solution. I will work with teachers to determine what do we need to do so our kids can learn and you can enjoy your job. So I am open to any solution that teachers and parents can come up with so that students learn and teachers enjoy their job. I believe that individual parents working with individual teachers can get the best results for individual students.
And just to go back to that question, like, let's say if a tax credit bill were to come up again next session, would you vote for measures that would give taxpayer dollars to families, to private individuals to be able to use it however they see fit, whether it be a religious school, other sort of tuition options? Would you vote for that?
So right now in the state of Kansas, we have one option. Tell me in your life, what do you benefit from when you have one choice? If you had one choice of restaurant, would you benefit? If you had one choice of car to drive, would you benefit? Medicare came out with the final rule this year. And the Biden administration, in talking about the final rule in Medicare, talked about how great it is that Medicare beneficiaries have options. Medicare beneficiaries don't have just one option. They have dozens of options for prescription drug coverage. They have dozens of options for medical coverage. And we benefit from that. They can do Medicare Advantage, a supplement, different drug plans. I believe the same is true for education. Why do we think that a one-size-fits-all education program is right for every student? We have a student achievement crisis in Kansas. It's deeper than just let's spend more money. That's higher taxes for taxpayers. I'm willing to work with teachers and parents to help benefit individual students.
Jason Anderson, the question, do you support measures that would allow the use of taxpayer dollars to go to private or religious schooling? Why or why not?
I'm going to strongly oppose such a measure. I can think of many, many public systems and infrastructure where we have one option and our society is built on them. We have roads, we have electric grids, we have water systems, we have hospital networks, we have Social Security. It is not a definite thing that if you only have one of it, that it is insufficient for the task. I would agree that there will be always, in that scenario, there will be some parts of the population that are not getting everything that they want or need, but I can't opt out of the highways, right? I can't opt out of the electric grid. And if I do not get to take my tax dollars from that part of the budget and decide to go somewhere else. So no, I'm strongly against any kind of school voucher program, and I'm strongly opposed to the idea that somehow Johnson County schools are not high-performing schools. The data does not back that up at all.
Yeah, and what would you say to the argument that families, students deserve a choice, they deserve to, if their school is underperforming, they deserve to seek out better options for them?
I'm very supportive of the breadth of options that are available. The reality though, 90% of kids in Kansas are currently enrolled in public schools. If you start looking at Western Kansas, you'll have an entire county where there may not be a private school option available. So the idea that at Topeka, there's some kind of a voucher program that we can implement that is going to be equitable for all kids across the entire state and not advantage certain specific niche subgroups here in Johnson County and in the metros, I don't think that's achievable.
We'll do one more question before closing statements. It's a question that came from the audience as well as one that I was hoping to ask. So this summer, the legislature passed and Governor Laura Kelly signed into law a bill aimed at enticing the Chiefs or Royals or both to Kansas, if it ever came to that. Maybe that ship has sailed, we don't know. The new law expands the state's Star Bond program to include up to 70% of the cost of financing a new professional sports team stadium in Kansas, which is estimated to cost upwards of $1 billion. Reader in the audience, as well as some readers who emailed us, want to know if you would support such a move by the state. Should the state be promising taxpayer dollars to the Chiefs and Royals? We'll start with Jason, 1 minute.
I love getting this question, and I hate answering this question because there is no safe answer to this question.
Are the Royals winning right now?
So I think what's most important is that between Missouri and Kansas, that we find a way to keep both teams in the metro. Outside of that, there are so many variables here that I have no visibility into. I don't know what the Commerce Secretary is going to try to negotiate. I don't know what KCMO or Jackson County is going to try to negotiate. And honestly, by the time either of us gets to office, our ability to be involved in that negotiation process is pretty limited. Like, it will already have left the station to wherever it is going. So I do hope that we find a way to keep the teams here. I'm supportive of either path.
TJ Rose, the question to you. We just want to know if you support such a move by the state to try to pass measures that would entice the Chiefs or Royals to come to Kansas. Should the state be promising taxpayer dollars to those professional sports teams?
I think that the Chiefs and Royals is a good use of the Star Bonds because it's like a toll road. You don't pay the tax on it unless you go use it, and it grows the state economy. It grows civic pride. So I think that it's a good use of the Star Bond concept.
Yeah, we're going to jump to closing statements because we have 2 more forms after this. I'm going to give each of you a chance to give one final message to the voters both here in the room and online. And we'll start with TJ Rose, 1 minute.
Okay. Thank you so much for being here tonight. I've enjoyed our time together. I'm running for Kansas State Senate to make Kansas the best state in the nation to pursue the American dream through lower taxes, lower crime rates, and higher student achievement at our schools. In this election, I believe that we have a fork in the road in our state. And I think about the Christmas classic, It's a Wonderful Life, and think about the tale of 2 towns in It's a Wonderful Life. You have Bedford Falls with human flourishing, thriving families, thriving businesses. I believe that is a result of my policies, low taxes, low crime rates, high student achievements where the kids can reach their fullest potential. The other town in It's a Wonderful Life is called Pottersville. And we can look around the nation and we can see cities and states that have Democrat leadership, and they're very reminiscent of Pottersville. In Johnson County, let's preserve our way of life. We cannot take it for granted, it must be preserved. My name is TJ Rose, and I ask for your vote. Thank you.
And the closing statement now to Jason Anderson, your final word.
So, as I started at the beginning of this session, thank you all for your time, incidentally. So, it's 3 things. It's schools, it's the economy, it's the infrastructure. They feed each other. The schools create a great workforce that attracts great companies, helps the companies that are here grow and thrive. That generates a tax base that then supports all of the amenities and infrastructure that we need to be able to come back and reinvest in those schools. The important thing that we have to maintain here, and that we have done for a generation, and we need to do for another generation, is continue that flywheel, right? We need to continue to invest in our schools. We need to continue to pursue expansive business opportunities, such as the Panasonic EV battery plant, a great example of something that can create a huge kind of economic windfall for the county and the state. And we need to find ways to in a balanced measure, collect taxes from all those constituents that doesn't overburden any particular group, so we can continue to invest in. So Jason Anderson, again, it's my name. The website's j4ks.com. Please go there. I've got a dozen different videos and different issues you can listen to. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you to the candidates. Give them a round of applause for continuing to support. Well, I normally have a whole litany of things that I go through to remind voters about, when to register, but I'll just say, because we have 2 more forms, we gotta get started at 6:15. Go vote. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next forum.
Thank you. That's me.
Thank you. You're busy.
Yes, very busy. Hey, thanks so much for coming out. Appreciate it. For a good time.
Thank you. Good to meet you. Thank you.
Oh, wait.
Thank you.
You're all
Thank you.
very Okay, Andrew. Golf cart, the next card, they should be over there.
Okay.
Can I recycle my question?
Oh,
Is that okay?
sure.
Yes. Then I don't have to.
Next card, just pass it around, ask for refills if people want them. When I did the 31, not counting staff, I think more roles are in, so 35. Andrew wants them.
I was like in the corner about that.
He's
Count my
I wanted to look at it, but I don't know. Hey, this is yours.
Okay, sure, why not?
Got one for you?
Thank you very much. You want an extra one? Absolutely. Did you need an extra one? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, empty seats. Empty seats and ask if anyone sitting wants another car.
Yeah.
Hi. I'm Ben Benson. Remember the name? Back when you were in the Blue Valley School? So you were before trade. Oh, no, okay, this was after. Yeah. So I saw it. Back at it. I guess he never actually left the school. Texas. My daughter's in Fort Worth. They got let's see, all the this is what Hey, I understand I created a phone call. The River Ridge has an ordinance that put signs up in River Ridge.
Oh, I saw an email. I tried it a couple years ago. Did they call you or something?
No, but I heard it, yeah, around the whole.
Now, he goes first on a full page. The smiley face. And go Get it? Down two. So Carl will go first. Opening statements, and then we take turns going through that. We'll rotate.
Probably all.
Yes.
I wouldn't worry about that.
Thank you.
Except I don't know how to start the next one, but. You can stand behind me. Yes. Yeah.
You ready? All right, good evening and welcome to this candidate forum hosted by the Johnson County Post. This is for Kansas House Districts 27 and 28. This is the second of 3 forums that we're doing tonight. In general, in the Leewood, Southern Overland Park, kind of southeastern Olathe area. I do have some announcements, but really we're on a time crunch because we do have a forum after this. So if you were in the room for the previous forum, maybe you remember what I said, but I've explained the process to the candidates. So we're going to dive right in. I do want to thank the Johnson County Library for helping us host this forum at Blue Valley Library in Overland Park. And I would just say, if you're not a subscriber, but you're watching online or you're in the room and you like what you see or you're interested in what you're doing, you can go to johnsoncountypost.com. You can sign up for the first 3 months for just $1. You can test us out. If you like us, you can stick with us for full price. If you don't, you can move on. But johnsoncountypost.com, you can get a trial offer for just $1. I want to thank the candidates as well for being here, House Districts 27 and 28, as you look at it from left to right. Being a candidate, of course, is time-consuming, labor-intensive, and so we appreciate you taking a little bit of time on this evening to come and share your views with our readers and the residents of Johnson County. So let's get right into it. They'll each get opening statements, 1 minute each. We'll just say, so this is House District 27, and then House District 28, and we will start in House District 28. We picked chits before, and so the person who got the smiley face, and that means that you're going first, is Representative Carl Turner, House District 28, and then we'll come back to the end and go forward. So all these men up here will be able to introduce themselves. We each get 1 minute, so we'll start with Carl Turner down at the end of the row.
Is there a way to adjust this up? No, I'm just kidding.
All right. It should be good, yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. Thank you to the Post for the invitation tonight. My name is Carl Turner. I'm the current representative in District 28. It's a position that I enjoy very much, helping constituents work through their problems and get results from state agencies, and working with my peers on both sides of the aisle to get through legislation that I think is in the best long-term interest of Kansas. My background is in accounting, financial management, acquisition analysis, project management, and in those roles, especially in the project management roles, it was heavily demanding that you build teams and you get results. And those skill sets have transferred well into the legislature. You know, I'm an experienced and effective legislator that gets things done, and I support my district. My joy in life is my family, and especially my 5 grandkids that are 5 years old and less. You know, it's their future that I think about that keeps me motivated to make sure that we leave things in as good an opportunity and freedoms that we had in our lives. So I appreciate the invitation, and thank you again.
We'll come back down to this end of the table. This will be House District 27, the race in that district, and we'll start with David Benson there. Get a chance for you to introduce yourself, David.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity, and thank the Post and the Johnson County Library System for allowing this to happen. I am a career educator, born and reared in Shernuck, Kansas. And I have a 44-year career in education, 33 of those years as a school superintendent in Kansas, Iowa, and Missouri. So I am well-versed in educational issues and also are running on women's reproductive rights and maintaining that system established by our Supreme Court. And also, I've been endorsed by the gun safety groups and would like to see us do some things in the common sense arena for gun safety. Again, Dr. David Benson, thank you.
Staying in House District 27, we'll go to incumbent Representative Sean Tarwater. You can introduce yourself.
Hi, Sean Tarwater. Thank you for the opportunity to be here, and thanks for putting this on. It's one of the events I look forward to every election cycle. And I am the current representative of the 27th district, and I want to thank you for the opportunity for serving you for the last 8 years. It's a tremendous privilege to represent you in the legislature. And thank you for entrusting me with that. I look forward to another productive session. I serve on the Appropriations Committee, the Post Audit Committee, Unemployment Modernization Committee, Insurance Committee, and in addition to that, I chair the Commerce Committee for the last 6 years, where I've become pretty effective in getting things done for Kansas, all Kansas. I work by collaborating with all Kansans, no matter what, no matter if they agree with me or not. And a lot of my good friends in the legislature are actually on the other side of the aisle. I've drafted and passed many pieces of legislation that helps Kansas, including bringing Panasonic to down, protected unemployment trust fund, got people back to work, rebuilt unemployment computer system, the Chiefs bill that protects us from overregulation, and several bills for persons with disabilities who are my passion. And I had a lot more to say, but we'll just move on.
Yeah, you'll have time to say it for sure. And we'll do one final opening statement, go back to House District 28, that race, and Ace Allen, a chance to introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kyle. In my decades as a council physician, I worked with very, very anxious patients and their families facing the biggest challenges of their lives. And I offer hard-won skills in terms of truly listening, evaluating options, working collaboratively with other experts, and working with patients to make the best decisions for themselves, decisions that never were nor will be swayed by bombast, nor not magical thinking, nor by money. I bring those sensibilities and that skill set to the House, I hope. And I also believe I have a better finger on the pulse of my district than my opponent does. I got into this race because he provided a key vote that enables 18-year-olds to carry loaded, concealed weapons on the school campuses. I felt I could not do something, and so I entered the race 2 years ago and lost by just 60 votes. As we'll see during our forum today, I believe, to be revealed, he's voted again and again against the express interests of a significant majority of the people in his district, our district, my district, House District 28.
We'll get a chance to go through those differences for sure. We'll get a chance to go through those differences specifically on the point of guns. We're going to address guns. We'll give you a chance to respond to that, Representative Turner. We'll go to our first question, and we'll go, the order falls to David Benson since Representative Turner went first. We'll kind of take turns going in order, and so back to House District 27 on this first question for all of you. We're holding forums for dozens of state House districts this fall. What do you see as the biggest priority for need from residents in your district, in this case House District 27 in Southeast Johnson County? David Benson, first for you, 90 seconds for this one.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, yes.
90 seconds, you said?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. The biggest priority in Johnson County is the maintenance of our quality of life, which is anchored by the public school system. We need to support the public schools, and we need to close the gap in funding on special needs children. Right now, the state is not meeting its legal obligation to those kids, and we certainly need to do that. Also, this last session, over 20 bills were introduced in the legislature that in some manner or form restricted women's health care options. I think that is incorrect. That is not what we need to be doing, and Johnson County voters voted overwhelmingly on the constitutional amendment to support abortion rights and women's health rights in this state. It is absolutely critical. And the last thing that I would say is I'm a local control advocate. As a local school superintendent for 33 years, I know the value of local control. The government that serves the citizens best is the government that is closest to those citizens. Thank you.
We'll stay in House District 27, and Sean Tarwater, the biggest priority you see for the district that you currently represent in Southeast Johnson County.
The biggest issue that I come across talking to constituents is inflation, and especially has to do with taxes and property taxes, especially food sales and all that. I feel like we addressed a lot of that in the sustainable tax plan that we passed. I feel like there are still some areas that we can further cut to give more relief to the constituents. But as I'm out and about, I hear most about inflation, property tax, a little bit of crime. We're worried about crime. And I feel like we're getting down the road. I think that, last year we made a lot of headway. Governor vetoed a lot of bills that would have helped a little bit more, but they were sustainable in most people's opinion, and they were bipartisan in nature. Few of them were unanimous in the House. But we got it done at the end of the day with the good tax plan, I think. And I'm sure we'll go through that in a little bit.
We'll move to House District 28. Ace Allen, the biggest priority or need that you see for residents in House District 28. 90 seconds.
Yeah, thank you. I think that the priorities seem to change after the shooting at the Kansas City Chiefs shooting at downtown. I heard a lot at the door. I heard a lot about gun safety as an issue. I don't hear so much now, but we are one school shooting, one mall shooting away from that becoming a top issue again. Education, no question. Everybody is concerned. Most of the people here, especially in my district, is concerned about education. That many of them came here from around the world, by the way, for our superb education. That we don't have oceans, we don't have an ocean view, we don't have mountains, but by God, we have great education, and that brings people here and it keeps them there. We have a lot to be proud of, and we need to bolster that as much as we possibly can, and we're going to be getting into that, I'm sure. Finally, in terms of healthcare, I think one thing that may not come up here is Medicaid expansion. It doesn't come up much at the door, but when you drill into it with people in terms of healthcare costs and so forth, it can be a really big, important issue for our state. And a foregone opportunity to date that we might be able to change in the next year or two.
And rounding out, this question will end with, still in House District 28, Carl Turner, the biggest priority or need for the residents in this district for you?
Well, thank you for the question. I've been out walking for months, thousands of doors, and it's been fairly consistent. People very much appreciate the quality of life that we have here in the district. Anything you want, there's probably 3 or 4 of them within a mile. We're very blessed, and people know that, and they're very much appreciative of what we have and wanting to preserve that. It's a fairly diverse district, actually. There's some very affluent areas, and there's some areas that are struggling very much, and I heard that, with the high cost of rents, insurance, gas, they're struggling paycheck to paycheck. So I think inflation, the other thing I hear a lot about is property taxes, and especially for the older citizens, because on a fixed income, they're getting priced out, and we don't want them to be priced out of their own home. So, and of course, education is always key. People again appreciate that we have the top rated schools in Kansas here in the district. So.
We'll jump into some other issues, and with the other forum coming up, we'll have time maybe for 5, 6, maybe 7 issues. We have some issues already coming in from the index cards. Order falls to Sean Tarwater, so this is who will answer this question first. We'll give you each a minute for this one. One reader asked, they emailed us this question. They want to know your views on abortion. Are legislators going to pursue new laws that might put new rules or restrictions on abortion access?
Many readers cited the 2022 statewide vote rejecting the Value Them Both Amendment as sort of a barometer for where Kansans and Johnson counties feel about this. So what about that? Are you satisfied with the current laws and restrictions on abortion in Kansas? Do you think access should be expanded in any way? Do you support new restrictions on abortion? If you were to be elected or re-elected, what would that look like? So we'll start with Sean Tarwater first.
So we just talked about issues that you hear about at the door, and that's just not one that I'm hearing any issues with. I mean, Kansas spoke 2 years ago, and we can't make laws on abortion. We can't limit abortion in the state of Kansas. And so I think that's behind us, but if you want to talk about it, Bill Clinton said abortion should be early and rare. And Ronald Reagan said everyone advocating for abortion is already born. I believe with them, I agree with them both. And the bills that I supported this year were supported the Pregnancy Center bill in order to help women know that we're there to help them through a pregnancy. Supported a bullying bill that made it illegal to bully women into having an abortion if they didn't want to. And I supported a bill that you have to save the baby if it's accidentally born alive during an abortion. Those are the bills that I support, and none of those limit abortion in any way. There were those are the things we need to focus on going forward.
Now going to House District 28, Ace Allen, your stance on this issue, satisfied with the current laws and restrictions on abortion in Kansas? Would you want to see access expanded in any way? Do you support new restrictions? What say you?
I think that response was not complete. It was incomplete. There were about 21 bills submitted to the legislature, both houses, during this last session, aimed at restricting or confining or drawing back rights to women's reproductive rights. We could go into details of that as appropriate. I think the key thing to me is that in my district, over two-thirds of the voters, all voters, voted to preserve a woman's right to full reproductive autonomy. My opponent thinks that they're wrong. He voted against that. He's, I believe, so far removed from his constituents, for example, that in one of the recent legislative attempts to eliminate abortion, he voted against exceptions for rape and incest. Correct me if I'm wrong, Carl. I'm also kind of appalled that anyone would want to insinuate themselves into a situation, I'm talking about state legislators here, where they have where they demand authority but don't take responsibility for their actions.
You give me two-way rebuttals here, so I will give Sean Tarwater maybe 30 seconds. It's not your race, not your opponent, but if you his characterization of your recitation being incomplete, any 30-second response to that?
Well, I don't know how to answer it other than experience is going to matter. If he ever gets elected, he'll understand that when you introduce a bill, you can introduce a bill, anybody can introduce a bill. It doesn't mean that it's going to become law. I mean, it takes a lot for something to become law. So, yeah, I'm sure there were plenty of bills around abortion that were submitted, but the ones that we worked out were the ones that did not limit abortion. And so he'll figure it out eventually if he ever decides to take a law class.
We'll go back to House District 28, and Carl Turner, it's your turn now. Maybe some things to respond to, but also just your thoughts on this question about abortion, where you stand, the current level of laws and restrictions governing abortion, and how you characterize that.
Well, thank you. Yeah, to me, I'd say this issue is settled. I mean, there was a vote, and that vote for the Supreme Court has the right to an abortion has strict scrutiny around it. So there is no infringing on that right. And there was no bill. Back to the point that was just made, anyone can introduce a bill. So my opponent is being less than honest to say, you know, there were bills submitted. Yes, there are bills submitted. There were 800 bills submitted in the House, and you can submit a bill for whatever you want, but it doesn't advance and it doesn't go anywhere and it wasn't considered. So that's spin. Anyway, so yeah, I keep hearing that we're chipping away, but you can't. It's got a strict scrutiny around it. It is in the Constitution, according to the Supreme Court, and the current justices will be there for a good number of years. I don't expect that we're going to ever, in my term, or in upcoming terms, be considering anything infringing on abortion.
And so the bills that you have voted for, the ones that they, I mean, you don't characterize those as infringing on the right of abortion as stated by the Kansas Supreme Court.
I have no idea what he's talking about.
Maybe give A-Sound just maybe 30 seconds to respond, just because maybe elucidate what you were talking about.
Well, there was a legislative attempt to eliminate abortions. It may have been before this vote, no, but I think it was after.
Before the vote, no.
But were you voted for, voted to, against exceptions?
I'll ask a follow-up
for rape
question
and-
for all four of you. I'll ask a
But
follow-up
again,
question.
that's dishonest, because he's saying that we're chipping away at a right, and now he said, oh, that was before the
Well,
actual.
and we can dig into that one too.
Yeah, we'll get to
Let's
David
dig-
Benson
we'll
now, the
dig
last
into
person to
that.
answer this question back in House District 27. Your thoughts on abortion, the current state of laws and restrictions in Kansas.
Well, I support the current state, and I am opposed to the chipping away that is currently being proposed. These 20-plus bills are not neutral. They are with the intent to chip away at women's rights and privileges granted to them as they're citizens of this state. And I have examples. House Bill 2749, abortion reporting, requires medical facilities to report reasons for each abortion to the Secretary of Health with a list of 11 reasons, and if a person declines, they have to give up 10 pieces of demographic information to the state. That was supported by my opponent. House Concurrent Resolution 5003, regulating abortion through legislative action. This bill passed the House, and it...
Have to wrap that up, yeah, wrap your thought, yeah, wrap your thought.
Okay. Representative Ballard had an amendment to this bill for rape, incest, and life of the mother. My opponent voted not to approve those reasons in the House passed bill.
So the final question on this topic, and it'll just be a follow-up for all four of you, give you about 30 seconds to respond. It's kind of falling back to Sean, so we'll go through all four of you on this one. It came up in the last forum, but many voters see this as a moral issue, one way or the other, whether you are on the, just characterizing in general, but whether you want to, as one questioner in the audience said, want to protect the rights of preborn babies or fetuses, or on the other side, if you think that there should be reproductive autonomy, is what you said earlier. So where morally, personally, do you fall on that spectrum?
Well, morally and personally, I have never and would never want to have an abortion. I have 4 sons. I held them all right after they were born, and I recognize the miracle of life and the love that I felt when I held my children. I would never be able to extinguish one of them. So that's it.
Asa Allen, personal stance on abortion.
Yeah, I think it's, I think it was cited before. It was actually Hillary Clinton who stated that abortion should be safe, legal, and rare. I'm fully in accordance with that. I don't like it at all as a sort of birth control, sort of primary birth control method and so forth. And that said, there are a lot of religious traditions. In fact, most religious traditions, and I've asked at the 4 major religious communities in our district, their stance on abortion, and all of them, including most Christians, by the way, most Christian denominations, say there's no blanket prescription against this, and in fact, the life of the mother, in most cases, takes precedence.
That thought's understood. We'll move now to Carl Turner.
Over the life of an embryo.
Yeah, Carl Turner, your thoughts, personal thoughts on abortion.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I think my position has always been that I believe life begins before conception. That's my personal view, or I'm sorry, before birth. But yeah, I'm way too far back there. But I've always said that there should be a right to an abortion, with the exceptions of rape, incest, and life of the mother.
And finally, David Benson.
While abortion is an abhorrent subject, it is legal, and I support the concept that a woman has the right to control their own bodily functions. The reality is, it is a bad subject, and everybody's personal morals get involved in it, and I just think it needs to be available. And I believe in the Jewish tradition, and that is that upon birth, life and the soul is blown into a person's body with their first breath.
We'll go to the next topic, and I think the order falls to Ace Allen in House District 28. Got some questions about taxes. So we'll ask about that. Of course, this summer, lawmakers passed, and Kansas Governor Laura Kelly signed into law tax cut passage that slashes roughly $2.4 billion in property and income taxes. Some of our readers think maybe it doesn't go far enough. The law does reduce state income tax brackets from 3 tiers to 2, eliminates the state tax on Social Security benefits, among other things. Your position, do you think this tax bill provides enough relief for Kansans? Why or why not? Would you like to see more tax cuts? And if so, what would that look like? Ace Allen, 1 minute.
Sure, I think it's a good tax cut. It involved a lot of people, taken a lot of time, and had to go back into session to accomplish this. The question always with taxes is which taxes are cut and for which Kansans. I think the important part that Governor Kelly was fighting for was to make sure that these tax cuts were sustainable. Tax cuts that had been presented before she took it into overtime session would not have maintained. We would have gone into a situation where we were bringing in less taxes than we were spending, a negative balance, in about 3 years or so. It was not a sustainable tax cut before, and it was turned around and became a sustainable tax. I think our job now is to see how that plays out, see how our general fund is doing, how the Kansas budget is doing, and shape future tax policy based on it.
Staying in House District 28, Carl Turner, satisfied with the tax bill that passed this summer? Would you want to see more? What would that look like?
Yeah, there were several attempts. Each one that came back the next one was worse for the taxpayer than the one before. So am I happy with the one that finally got through? Sure. I think it gave much needed tax relief, especially in a time of inflation and higher prices. But I do think that the combined property, sales, and income tax for our state is still too high. If you look at our neighboring states, we're still among the highest of that group. We have the highest upper tax rate. So more needs to be done to keep this state attractive for both residents and businesses. A couple of the things that I liked in the earlier bills were inflation adjusters on things like the standard exemption and the standard deduction. So I would like to see those, because without those, then you get a de facto increase every year because those fall behind. But, on the sustainability, what also needs to be looked at is spending, and we've got to stop the growth of spending and the growth of government in Kansas. The budget's up 50% over the last 5 years. That is not sustainable. So we need to cut, rein in government and cut spending so that we can pass those taxes on back to the folks.
So back to House District 27, we'll start with David Benson here. Your thoughts on the tax bill that passed this summer? Did it go far enough? Would you want to see more tax cuts? If so, what would that look like?
I think at this point, we need to determine what our revenue looks like outgoing. I know the legislature has research department and they make good projections, but they are projections. At this point, I would think that we need actual knowledge about the effect of these tax cuts going forward for several years before we tinker around any more. If we do tinker, I think it needs to be very targeted, and it needs to be targeted towards our young families and child care, which is eating up income for our young families that are two-worker families. And second, we need to target our seniors and give them the relief that they need to stay in their house to be successful in their retirement years. Thank you.
In ending this question, we'll stay in House District 27. Sean Tarwater, the bill that passed this summer, is now law. Did it go far enough for you? Do you want to see more tax cuts? If so, what would that look like?
Yeah, so I voted for all of the tax plans that came across our desk this year. They were all sustainable according to research. for very many years. And the final tax bill that we passed was actually 20 or 25 or maybe $30 million different than the one she vetoed several weeks before. The whole reason we came back was so that maybe she could get credit. I don't know, but it certainly wasn't as different of a policy as this gentleman said. Yeah, I think our tax bill is good. I think we can go further, and it doesn't surprise me that my opponent is not for further relief. We had to fight with him 4 years ago just to give you your deductions back when President Trump passed a tax bill that messed up our taxes, so you could not have your deductions for your home interest and your health care and all that. Those were gone. Governor vetoed that bill, and my opponent voted against overriding it, so we had to come back the next year to do it. So it doesn't surprise me that he doesn't want to give you any more relief.
And David Benson, give you a chance to respond to that.
Certainly. I think targeted relief is appropriate. I think general relief at this time is to wait and see how this bill plays out. The targeted relief I would support is for child care and for seniors. Thank you.
A follow-up question on taxes, and I think the order has fallen to Carl Turner, so I'll ask a version of this to all of you. But we have some readers, including one person in the audience, who ask if you support cutting taxes, what specifically would you would try to cut out of funding for? I guess the balance, I'm trying to read your hand right here, but if you support cutting taxes, what specifically would you cut funding for? I guess that's the question, yes. So there are corresponding cuts to spending if you want to cut taxes because revenue would fall. On the other hand, we do have readers who have emailed us saying, pointing out that we still big reserves in the state. Isn't that a time now to try to give more relief to Kansans? So whatever side you fall on this, if you want more tax cuts, the question for you, maybe Carl Turner, is where would you cut spending? 1 minute.
Well, I think there's a committee now looking at the budgeting process, because everybody that goes up there as a new freshman legislator thinks you're going to actually play a bigger part in the budget process, but the fact is that it gets cranked out in appropriations and it comes to you at the end of session. So I think there's plenty of opportunity for reducing it, because I said, I think per capita our spending is much higher than other states. I just think it needs a good examination, and they are looking at the budgeting process, and I forgot the other question.
Are there specific areas for you to cut? I mean,
Well, yeah, I wouldn't know those right off the bat. I just know that we're growing government at an unsustainable rate. It's grown 50% in 5 years. Then more can be done to actually make us more efficient as a state and realize some savings.
David Benson, back in House District 27, I read from your other answers that maybe more skeptical of more tax cuts. So maybe respond to the readers who say, well, there's a big reserve right now. Would this be the time to give more relief to Kansans, as well as spending? Maybe to Carl Turner's point, spending is out of control. How would you respond to that?
Certainly, history teaches us that big reserves come and go. We're a downturn in the economy away from utilizing a lot of those reserves. I would support using some of those reserves to make improvements for Kansans. I've outlined those in a previous answer with child care and senior tax relief. Those are targeted. We can do those effectively, and I don't support, going back, knee-jerk reactions to the state of the economy now in Kansas, which, by the way, Governor Kelly and Lieutenant Governor Tolan have done an exemplary job in building Kansas' economy over the last few years. Thank you.
Staying in House District 27, Sean Tarwater, the question to you. You said you would want to go, would want more tax cuts. So if so, the questioner asked, would there be specific areas of the budget or spending that you would want to curtail in turn?
Yeah, so, I'm lucky enough to have sat on appropriations for the last 8 years, and I think I'll continue to sit on it. And that provides a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge. Every single thing that we do in that State House comes through that committee. And I have fought throughout all the years against raising the budget. In fact, we cut the governor's budget by about $1 billion last year. And I would continue to do that. I have notoriously paid down debt. I made a motion 2 years ago to pay $1 billion on the capers, and that saves us $77 million a year in budget going forward forever. that you can make a tax cut out of. So I'll continue to do things like that. But the thing we really need to focus on are the provisos that are added after the budget is passed and they go to conference, and then all of these things go into the budget. If we just stop that, I think we could have a bigger tax cut. Also, last month, we had an $82 million more money come in than was expected. And that's been a kind of what's been going on. We have $4 billion in the bank right now. And the last time we had a tax issue, after we cut taxes with only $700 million in the bank.
And we'll end this question back in House District 28 with Ace Allen. Do you think having more reserves, having more revenue means that this is an opportunity to give Kansans more tax relief? Is spending out of control as contended?
I'm gonna take a little bit of a sideways journey here, and that is we're leaving out a huge source of money for our state. That is to say Medicaid expansion. I talked briefly about it early on. We have foregone since 2013 about $6 to $7 billion in this state that would have been provided by the federal government for Medicaid expansion that would have served about 150,000 patients in the state of Kansas that are currently falling in a sort of donut hole between Medicaid and being able to buy private insurance. Most of them working poor, by the way, over 70% of them, the working poor. That would have been 9/10 of that is paid by the federal government, 10% by the state. Currently, our state money now is going to the federal government to supply that to other states, and yet we're not taking advantage of it. Finally, because we don't have a lot of time to talk about this, if the states around us, Oklahoma, Missouri, Arkansas, Nebraska, never mind Colorado, have adopted Medicaid expansion. Some of them far to the right of us politically. Why aren't we doing it?
Next topic, we have a couple of questions about guns that came in from the audience, as well as many questions via email. Before this, the order has fallen to David Benson in the House District 27 race, so we'll start with you. Of course, many readers want to know, is there any piece of gun-related legislation you would support that you think would put, what one reader emailed is called reasonable limits on guns. We also have a couple of specific policy questions that I can follow up with, but general, maybe just start with 1 minute of your thoughts on any piece of gun legislation that you would support.
Yeah, can I pass and go to the next gun?
I mean, you can, but.
No. Guns are a controversial topic. We obviously have a federal constitution that has been ruled by our Supreme Court at the federal level to give an individual right to gun ownership. We all support that. I am not here to take away anybody's guns. That said, I would support reasonable, effective measures that would help specifically gun locks, specifically parental responsibility for their guns in the case of children slaughtering each other with a gun that they find in the home. Specifically, bump stocks. Making bump stocks illegal in the state of Kansas would be a good idea. Magazines, there's just a litany of gun-safe issues that do not take away anybody's Second Amendment rights.
You know, staying in District 27, Sean Tarwater, any gun-related legislation that you would support?
So, I'm a Second Amendment legislature. I believe that the federal law covers all that. I am against anything that would infringe on the right of any individual to defend himself or herself, period. And anything that would slow down the process of defending yourself or make the bad guy have better weapons or better magazines than what you could have to defend yourself, period. I don't see me voting for any new gun laws that infringe upon the rights of Kansans.
So specifically asked here by a questioner, like red flag laws, gun storage laws, do those interest you?
there's no due process in any of that stuff, so I can't support it. I mean, there are laws that keep people from having guns, and most of these incidents that happen around the nation are already illegal. They're just not being enforced. What we really need to do is prosecute crime a lot better than we are, and that takes people off the street, and then the issue's not there. And what we really need to do is defend our schools and make sure that they're safe.
Well, I'll ask about schools in just a second. We'll go to House District 28. Ace Allen, thoughts on gun-related legislation, as some readers characterize it, gun safety legislation. Where do you stand?
Sure, I think just underlying, my underlying principle here is that the right to public safety trumps the right to unfettered ownership of guns, straight out. In terms of your specific questions, Kyle, yes, red flag laws, yes, gun storage laws, yes, background checks, yes, trigger locks. None of these are impinge on the Second Amendment in any realistic way. I think that the age that you can't drink until you're 21 because presumably you're not capable of making those decisions, and yet you can buy a gun, you can carry a concealed loaded weapon on the school grounds at age 18. Go figure, that should be repealed. And no guns to felons, and finally there should be legal exposure and consequences for people who don't store and transport their guns properly.
And rounding out this question, Carl Turner is still in House District 28. Your thoughts on gun-related legislation? Where do you stand on some of these issues and policies that have been brought up by the other three?
Well, I think the topics they brought up are the right ones, and there's two sides to this issue. One of them is there is a constitutional amendment, whether you want to say that other things trump that. It is a constitutional right. It needs to be respected. So the other side of it obviously is we can do some things, but if in fact, the word effective was used, if that in fact is effective, and we can walk a line between not denying the majority of folks just for the one-offs that violate their rights. I mean, we have very strong laws on murder, but these folks don't give a whole lot of heck about you, right? They blow right through these laws on murder. So laws don't stop criminals on doing things sometimes, but anyway.
Any specific measures that you could see yourself supporting? One's brought up by questioners and the red flag laws.
I'd have to listen to both sides. That's always my promise on everything. I would listen to both sides, and we've got to decide if there's something that can respect both sides.
Order falls to Sean Tarwater back in House District 27. For the next question comes from the audience. What is your position on school vouchers, tax credits for private citizens who may want to use taxpayer money or a tax credit to be able to apply it to a private school religious institution? Where do you stand on school vouchers as this questioner asks? Sean Tarwater.
So we talked earlier a little bit about school funding, and I helped write the bill in 2017 and 18 that fixed the funding of the schools. And I have supported the schools, the public schools, every single year. I vote yes, and I make effective changes to the bill after listening to the Blue Valley superintendent, which is in my district, and their lobbyist. So we've made a lot of changes along the way. I fully support the Blue Valley school system. That being said, we have some urban schools in Kansas that have some severe issues. And for example, in Wichita, we have a school that takes advantage of the scholarship program that you're talking about. And that school is in the same neighborhood as other public schools down there. And for some reason, in the inner city school districts, it is very difficult to learn. And you've got a school that is 13% proficient in math, meaning 13% of the students can actually test the grade level or better. And urban prep next door is 30%.
So maybe just to push you along, it sounds like you are in support of.
Yeah, we've got to give those kids a chance, or they're going to be on welfare. We're all going to be supporting them the rest of their lives. We got to give them a chance, and that's the only reason I support it. It will not affect Blue Valley. Blue Valley hasn't lost any children, any schools or funding because of that law.
But how the District 28 race, Ace Allen, the questioner from the audience, do you support school vouchers? Why or why not?
I do not. I think public schools are a sort of a crowning glory of the United States and need all the support they can get. If there's a public school that's not functioning properly, well, we have a brilliant state school system, state board of education, as well as the local ones. We can address that. The problem with the school, rather than making a single, solving it through vouchers, the problem with vouchers is about 60 of our 105 counties in Kansas simply don't have public schools. Now, they're going to be taxed to send their kids. Actually, don't have private schools. 60 of the 105 counties don't have private schools, and yet they're going to be paying into a kitty that for let's just say Johnson Countyans to send their kids to private schools. It doesn't seem fair to me. And there are other issues in terms of actually what that would do for defunding. Taking $5,000, those $5,000, let's say as a voucher, and giving it to a private enterprise would take it away from the public school system.
Yeah.
And that would have significant, very harmful side effects.
I'm going to stay in District 28 and go to Carl Turner, your position on school vouchers, asked by an audience member.
Yes, I think the issue here is education. I mean, that's really what we should all be pulling for, get kids educated. You know, being a parent, in my experience was you don't want to hear that something's going to get fixed in 2 or 3 years. Today, I only get one shot at getting my daughter through school. She gets one shot at 9th grade, one shot at 10th grade. So I think the focus is education, and whatever the issue that a parent may have with a particular school, whether it's the curriculum, their child wants something that's not there, maybe they're getting bullied, maybe they want to pursue an academic agenda that's not there. So I think the ability for folks to make that move and do the right thing for their kid is the right thing to do. Again, I don't think this will turn out a lot like open enrollment, which there was a lot of hand-wringing of, oh my gosh, this is going to just be horrible, it's going to ruin the schools. As your paper reported, it was pretty much a nothing burger. There wasn't that much movement. I mean, people in Blue Valley are not at risk of much. This whole concept of giving people a chance to move, because in Blue Valley, a lot of folks have the money to go ahead and take their students wherever they want them to go. A lot of kids don't have that choice, and they're trapped in a school, and we need to give them a chance out.
And rounding out this question back in the District 27 race, David Benson, the question from the audience, what is your position on school vouchers?
Thank you. In my experience in the Midwest, I can tell you that I oppose school vouchers, tax credit schemes, any of those things that move public money to private purpose. That is not the reason that tax revenue was raised. It is to go to public purposes, not private purposes. I've always asked in these bills just for a fair playing field, equal playing field. Well, back on April 6th of 2023, House Substitute for Senate Bill 83 established a voucher program. It passed 65 to 58 with zero accountability. That money was given to private purpose and no accountability structure. My opponent voted in favor of that bill.
You put a thumbs up, so I'll give you a chance to
Yes,
respond.
I did.
Sounds like you're ready to respond to that one.
Yes, I did. Like I said, we gotta give these kids a chance. And if you wanted the same accountability as our public school system, we've never unaccredited a school district ever. And so there's really no difference. And yeah, I supported that. I did support that bill.
David Benson?
Yeah, accountability standards like having certified teachers, like having certified administrators, like following the curriculum that has been approved, those are non-negotiable. Those kids deserve that in any school setting that they go to.
Yeah, we won't do an extended back and forth there, but we'll do one final issue before getting to closing statements. I will say this was the most asked question, at least we got from email. So I would be remiss if I didn't at least ask this question. I think many readers still see it as a litmus test of sorts. And this is what one reader said in their email, quote, I would like to know their stand on voter fraud, if they think it exists, and do they believe the 2020 presidential election was stolen from Donald Trump? And we'll start with Ace Allen.
Well, I think it's a great litmus test question. If you think that if you think the election was stolen and that Biden is not a legitimate president, it tells me something about your ability to look into, understand, and review facts, frankly. And I want to have that discussion. Yes, he won. Biden won fair and square. In terms of what's going on, if we could go into that, there's endless legal challenges from the Trump team, and none of them, over 60 of them, have not panned out. In terms of the great state of Kansas, there is no evidence of meaningful voter fraud, despite Sheriff Hayden's, Calvin Hayden's long-term seeking of evildoing, which I think was reflected among his constituents by the fact that he lost his primary race. Basically, our Secretary of State, Scott Schwab, has said the lies about the lack of integrity in Kansas elections are terrible. That's his quote. There have been exactly 18 convictions in 20 years, 18 convictions of voter fraud. Two of those, the only two that we know, the political party that was fraudulent were Republicans.
Staying in District 28, Carl Turner, the question from the reader who emailed it to us. Your stand on voter fraud, if you think it exists, do you believe the 2020 presidential election was stolen from Donald Trump?
So I think both Republicans and Democrats have raised concerns about elections. In 2016, we went through 3 years of investigating whether Russia influenced that one. And then in 2020, we went through more investigations, and as he referred to, 60 court cases. So no, I think nothing has come out that has shown that there's fraud in the elections, and both of those were legitimate.
Over to David Benson in District 27, the question from the reader. Your stand on voter fraud, if you think it exists, do you believe the 2020 presidential election was stolen from Donald Trump?
You know, it was not stolen, and the voter fraud does not exist in any way, shape, or form that would have enough impact to flip any elections. State of Kansas runs great systems. That's not a problem. What is a problem is the baloney that's been put out for almost 4 years, setting the stage for more legal contest and more angst in our communities here in November. Thank you.
And wrapping this up in District 27, Sean Tarwater.
Yeah, did you say that this was the #1 issue?
I mean, at least from the number of questions that we got about it from readers.
Okay, and that was 4 years ago, and last I checked, Biden is still president. Whether or not he's actually running the country is another question, but he certainly is our president. He's our president, and you know, that whole deal caused a lot of people to question the validity and the integrity of elections, including in the state of Kansas. And as elected officials, when our constituents are concerned about something, we've got to at least look into it for them. And I think you can say what you want about Sheriff Hayden, but he did look into it, and he didn't find anything. So if anything, that's going to solidify the fact that our elections are safe. And so, sure, and maybe it lasted too long or whatever you want to say about it, but he did look into it because people were saying they had some concerns, and he cleared those concerns up. It didn't come out the way he wanted to, maybe, but he cleared those concerns up, and I'm glad that now we can say, yeah, our elections are safe. There are a few issues that we can still look at, though. I mean, we had 1,000 ballots come in supposedly that were not postmarked, so they didn't count. We need to make sure every Kansan voter vote counts, and only Kansans voters vote counts.
We'll give these gentlemen a chance to make closing statements, 1 minute each. I believe the order, ironically enough, is falling to Carl Turner. You had the first opening statement, so you will lead off closing statements as well. This is in District 28. Carl Turner, your closing statement.
Well, thank you again for the invitation tonight and the discussion. I think it's a good conversation. If you talk to those folks that know me, they know that when I get into something, I get into it 100%. And I have given my full to this position, representing my constituents. When they reach out, I often have coffee with them. We talk about whatever it is on their mind. Whether we're together on issues or not, at least we can air them out. I'm not a super political person. I didn't run for this as some goal in life, but the opportunity came, and I thought I brought a good skill set to the job. And so I listen to all sides. That's always my promise, as I mentioned earlier. I decide what's in the best long-term interest of the state, and I love helping constituents get results from state agencies. So, I continue to work hard for my folks, preparing for committee meetings and focusing on getting results for them. So I thank you for your time and questions, and I would ask for your vote on November 5th or before.
We'll come back to District 27, give David Benson a chance to give his closing statement.
Well, thank you again for hosting this and the focused questions. We appreciate it. I'm Dr. David Benson. I'm running for House 27 to be your state representative. I believe that the questions tonight have brought forth contrast in the candidates in a polite and civil manner, and that's what we should be doing in our state and our local elections. I am the education candidate with my background and superintendencies in multiple states. I will be in a position once in Topeka to help rewrite the school finance formula, which is scheduled to be rewritten during this biennium. And I know state laws in multiple states, and I can bring perspective that other legislators will not have. Thank you. I would appreciate your kind consideration of voting for us.
And staying in District 27, Sean Tarwater, your closing statement.
Thank you, and thanks again for the opportunity to be here and address some of these questions. And my opponent's right, there are some vast differences. I would encourage everyone to go out and do their research on anybody you're going to vote for, and so that you vote for the person that's going to represent you the most. When it comes to schools, I can tell you, I told you, I helped write the bill that fixed the problem, and I have fully funded, and the governor agrees. Every year she says we have fully funded bipartisanly school funding. I'm the one that made the motion, by the way. I listened to the superintendent and her concerns on the open enrollment, and it's the Blue Valley School District was going to be overrun. We passed, I made a motion that said that the school board gets to decide how many students you can come into each class, including 0. And I brought that amendment and it went on. I can promise you, if my opponent had brought that, it would not have gotten on. He did not get along well with most of the Republicans up there. And unfortunately for him, they run the place, and so you've got to get along with them. I get along with both sides. If you want somebody that's going to be effective on schools, I'm your guy, because I can get it done. I've proven it. Thank you.
And final closing statement, we'll go back to District 28 and Ace Allen.
Yeah, I liked Dave Benson's comment about perspective. I do bring an unusual perspective as a cancer doctor for almost 40 years, practicing at the VA hospital and at KU Medical Center. And there's things that you can only learn by doing that I can bring to the service of the people of Kansas. There are very consequential votes that my opponent has taken that I and the balance of the people that he represents strongly disagree with, and we've talked about many of those: guns, vouchers, abortion issues, Medicaid expansion. We know that the majority of the people in his district, and I'll just say abortion is an obvious example, where over two-thirds of people voted for reproductive rights, that he's countered that, he has voted against that. We've examined those in today's forum. The question I pose is, do you want your representative to represent you? And am I that guy? I'm Ace Allen. I am running to represent the people of House District 28 and of our great state of Kansas. I will fight for the free state values of common sense, rationality, respect, generosity, responsibility, fairness, and transparency. I want to be your voice in Topeka, and thank you, Kyle, for a really wonderful forum.
Well, thank you very much. Give them a round of applause for all 4 participants. Wednesday, your deadline to register to vote is October 15th. Please go out and vote. Thank you so much for watching this forum by the Johnson County Caucus. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I only
You stand for the last show? Stand for the last show? There's 3 rounds. I don't know what the district numbers are, but they said probably House. The first 2 have been Senate. Saving some paper?
Right next to it.
You saving some paper, ma'am?
No, I'm just gonna redo my questions, so I don't have to rewrite it. But I think I'm gonna have to, that's all right. Sorry about that.
Just curious, did you get to submit any questions?
Yeah, I submitted a few.
Did they read them?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I'm not sure.
Oh my! Now I'm getting attention.
What?
My name's Billy Crone. I go to the public meetings and share with my neighbors what I hear. So
No, I saw you videoing the whole thing, and I thought, it's gotta get a video.
works out pretty well. So far, it hasn't accidentally hit the stop button when I set it down. So
That's awesome.
thanks.
How you doing,
Good
brother?
job.
Doing well. All right, good to see you. Are you up next?
Good job. And good luck, both of you.
Another baby. Wishes. Thank you. No, this is what it looks like. I can see it, but it's like
I'm certain you.
Yeah.
But his
Like it would just switch to close on the radio. Wow, that's good. This is, you guys want to see it? This is tough. Yeah, this tough. This tough.
Ace, your words got me thinking earlier.
Yeah.
Do you believe in all Kansans having equal rights?
What does
And
that
do you-
mean? What does that mean?
Having equal protections under the law? Equal rights and
Yes,
freedoms?
absolutely, of
I would
course, of
assume
course,
so. Are there any
yeah.
exceptions maybe for people with different ages?
Well, sure, of course, if you're under the age of 18,
Mhm.
et cetera, and if you have, for example, if you're incompetent, mentally incompetent, if you have a power of if someone has a power of attorney for you,
Mhm.
and you can't make those decisions, yeah, sure, lots of
Generally, when we
exceptions.
become adults, 18, we have full rights.
Well, it depends on,
mean-
depends, I mean, no, you don't.
'Cause
Yeah,
you
can't
mentioned-
drink, you can't drink till you're 21.
Yeah.
So that's not a
Do you
full right,
believe
is it?
that's good? That's fair and equal?
I don't know. I'd have to think about that. And by the way, when you as a male, as a 16-year-old male or 17, guess what? You're no matter how good a driver is, and even if you don't have any driving history at all, you pay a whole lot more for your driving insurance.
That is
right?
true.
Right?
I couldn't compare to being a
that's-
female,
so
but
that should that be? Should we?
I know
should
my
we make
insurance
should
is
we
high.
make a law that's not legal? I mean, I'm just curious.
Well, if
Do
you
think
believe in
so?
equality, it sounds like you just pointed one out that's
No,
an
I'm
inequality.
asking you. I'm asking you. Do you think that's fair? Because it sounds like maybe you don't agree.
I don't think it's particularly fair, no.
Yeah, like fair enough. All right. Thanks for the conversation.
Thank you.
Your body language? When I'm talking, you're shaking your head.
I heard some not so good things from you.
Well, what do you represent?
I'm just an individual citizen in Johnson County.
All right, super,
So.
super. You in District 27?
No, I am not.
Okay.
But
Well,
the laws that the Senate passes will affect all of us in Kansas, right? It
Yep.
doesn't just affect District 27. So I'm interested in those who represent us,
all right.
who represent the
I
county.
appreciate you coming out this evening, but I could tell when I was talking and saying something that you didn't necessarily
Oh,
agree
like
with.
some of the stuff, I'm like, is it going to be good? I don't know. We'll see. So,
All right.
well, thank you for talking to the public, though. That's important.
Well, again, thank you to the candidates as well, all 4 of you in these 2 House districts for being here. We've got perfect attendance tonight from all the candidates, which is great. And so give a chance for the readers to see, I should give gold stars, I really should. Give a chance for readers to see the differences in your policy positions and your priorities as well. So let's just dive right in. They picked lots, as it were, right before, and so Dan Osman was got the happy face, so he will go first, and so that will be the order we go in. So we'll allow each of these candidates a chance to introduce themselves, starting in District 48. Dan.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you very much to the Johnson County Post for hosting this tonight. This is a well-needed service for the community. My name is Dan Osman. I'm the representative for District 48. I've been representing you for the last 3 years now. I'm running for my 3rd term. And I've lived here in the Johnson County area almost my entire life. I grew up in Prairie Village, and after I graduated from law school, moved over to the Missouri side for a little bit, but came back here with my family, my wife and my 2 daughters. Now live here in Overland Park. My daughters go to public school here. I'm an attorney. I do a lot of contract compliance work and affirmative action compliance, along with, as I juggle the job of legislator. In the legislature, I serve on judiciary because as an attorney, you need somebody that can actually understand the law and actually help to craft the appropriate language for the law. So I'm happy to serve, and I would love to have another term. Thank you so much.
Sticking in District 48, now we'll go to Randy Ross. Allow you a chance to introduce yourself, Randy.
Thank you, Kyle, and good afternoon or good evening to everybody here. It started out in the afternoon, but we've kind of gone a little longer. And thank you all for staying. My name is Randy Ross. I'm the Republican candidate for House District 48. Also, Kyle, I'm a Post subscriber. Okay, just thought I would let you.
Trying to butter it up, guy.
Yeah. Well, the timer over there liked it, so who knows? But
30 seconds.
Median too. But anyway, my wife and I moved here in the 1980s, about 10 years after we honeymooned here. We're originally from northern Iowa. And one of the things that, when we were just looking around this area, when we were here on our honeymoon, what we saw were, nice neighborhoods. Heard that they had great school systems, and the cost of living was very moderate. Folks, you don't find that everywhere. It doesn't happen by accident. And one of the things about the legislature, they can do things that help keep it that way. So thank you very much. Look forward to our discussions.
And that's House District 48, covering a portion of Overland Park, generally between 119th and 159th, between Schweitzer and Antioch in general. Now to House District 8, right next door to House District 48, if that makes any sense. Chris Croft, your opening statement.
Yeah, well, welcome to District 8. So this is the district. So I'm Chris Croft. I represent this district, and I've done that for 6 years. I am the House Majority Leader. I've been married for 39 years. Anybody that's met my wife knows I married up big time, so I've done a good job there. I have 2 kids. One is a rocket scientist for the Navy, and the other one, her husband's a police officer, and she manages the farm. With 6 kids, I have 6 grandkids, and I have a dachshund who plays in that field right out there, so that's kind of fun. So I'm not from here, and that's something different than all of this. I actually grew up in Florida, and I was in the Army for 30 years. I was an Army logistics officer, retired as a colonel, was running the Army's Leadership Center here at Fort Leavenworth. And when I had the opportunity to finally decide, my wife and I could decide where we lived, we chose here. We didn't choose to go back to Florida or the East Coast. It was here because the people and the community. I'll tell you, they baked cookies, and when we walked in, they were just very welcoming, and that we knew we made the right pick. And there's no traffic. Love that. So again, my background's in problem solving, and look forward to the questions.
Staying in the District 8 race, and we'll go to Pam Shernuk now for your opening statement.
Thank you all for being here tonight, and thank you to the Post for hosting. My name is Pam Shernuk, and I'm running for state representative in House District 8. I'm a lifelong Kansan, and I've lived in Overland Park for 34 years. Throughout that time, I've had the honor of working with many of you through my advocacy with Blue Valley Schools and through my efforts to support our aging population here in Johnson County. I believe strongly in the importance of bipartisanship. I am a proud moderate who is supported by both Democrats and Republicans because I know that real solutions come when we bring people together, not when we divide them. Public service runs deep in my family, and I'm committed to continuing the legacy of leadership and compassion that my father embodied during his time in the Kansas House. I look forward to discussing how we can work to build a brighter, more inclusive future for District 8. Thank you for being here.
The order has fallen to Randy Ross in the District 48 race. The first question I've asked the other two forums tonight is what are, the fact that we're holding forums for dozens of different state house races, we want to kind of know what you see as the biggest priority or need for your particular district, District 48 in this case. So 90 seconds for each of you to start this one off with kind of a warm-up question, but Randy, what do you see as the biggest need or priority for District 48?
Thank you, Kyle. I have knocked on probably over 4,500 doors since I first started campaigning. And the message that comes through clearly is, number one, tax relief. People want to know that their money is being well spent, and if there are opportunities to bring taxes down, they're in favor of that. Number two, and equal position in my opinion, education. Remember I mentioned that when my wife and I were here on our honeymoon, we learned a lot about how good the school system is. People know that. They know what makes Overland Park and District 48 a great community, and they want to see that maintained. The third issue, cybersecurity. People say, well, okay, tell me about that. Well, you know, the state's been hacked twice. Once for our labor department, and they walked off with about almost $500 million. And then last year, our state court system got locked up by Russian bad actors being held for ransom. Those are things that we should be working hard to prevent, and we should also be looking and encouraging some of the other softer targets around the state. I'd like to see school districts be sure to take an assessment of how strong their internal systems are so that student information is not taken and sold on the dark web.
Coming back to the other end of the table and into District 8, Chris Croft, the biggest priority or need you see for House District 8?
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that question. So, walking a million steps, that's my goal. We're already over that, so I'm excited about that. And the number one topic is taxes, property taxes specifically, and if you dig down into that, it's about valuations. And where do you go with that? How do we do that? The second part of that is the cost of living, the cost of food. And they talk about a lot of times how they go to the grocery stores and they no longer get a full bucket or a full basket of food because they can't afford it. So they have to make ends meet. This is really a concern right now. I hear a little bit about crime. It's starting here. It's kind of inched up there in the discussion, but not as much as obviously as taxes. And then child care. Child care is becoming an issue well, it's not becoming, it is an issue, but I'm starting to hear it more at the doors now as well. So those are the things that I'm hearing as I'm walking around the district.
Staying in the District 8 race, Pam Shernuk, what do you see as the biggest challenge, priority, need for the residents of District 8?
Thank you. Well, like everybody else up here, we've been knocking doors for months, and I think we're all hearing pretty much the same thing. I know I'm hearing about people wanting lower taxes. When you knock on the doors, that's the number one thing that they talk about. In particular, our senior population is concerned about being taxed out of their homes. They want to be able to stay in their own houses, and they're worried that their property taxes are gonna increase so much that they can't stay there. Public education is huge in Blue Valley. I hear that at all the doors. They're concerned about funding our schools, our special education, about teacher recruitment and retention. I might mention that I am endorsed by 3 former Blue Valley superintendents, and I'm also endorsed by the top 3 pro-public education organizations here in the state. My opponent does not have any pro-public education endorsements. The third thing that I hear about is healthcare, and that includes everything from expanding Medicaid to protecting women's reproductive freedom. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that my opponent did vote to put the anti-abortion constitutional amendment on the ballot in 22, with no exception for the life of the mother, rape, or incest. I support a woman's right to make her own health care decisions, and I make sure that people know where I stand when I'm at their door.
Well, before you can, maybe give Chris a chance to respond to a couple of points that Pam made in that.
Well, sure we could. I mean, you're gonna get back to it again eventually, right? But point is that I voted to give the people the right to choose, and the people chose. So I have no qualms about voting for that, so that way the people had that opportunity. And as far as the other stuff, I have fully supported education funding all 6 years that I've been there, without any strings attached to them either. So many times they told us not to do that, and I still did that. And it was said earlier, I worked with the superintendent and the school board, specifically the lobbyist, as that process and making sure we got our views in there.
And rounding out the answers to this question back in the District 48 race, Dan Osman, your biggest priority need that you see within House District 48.
Just like everyone was talking about here today, we've knocked on thousands of doors, and it really comes down to 3 basic things. 1 is education, 2 is taxes, and 3 is healthcare. So when we talk about education, the biggest thing that's happening next year is that the funding formula is up to be renegotiated. And the question is, do you want people that are there that understand what fully funding really means, and especially for special education? Blue Valley alone, we're spending $18 million on special education. Across this Johnson County, we're spending about $85 million. And if we don't support that, it's going to take a bite on everything else that we hold dear within the Blue Valley School District. Taxes as well, especially residential property taxes. We are dealing with, we had a $2.4 billion tax bill that passed this last year, and it was really great. We're going to get into it in a little bit more detail, but it really left a lot on the table for residential property taxes. And I want to go back and revisit that and actually help significantly reduce that. Healthcare, from Medicaid expansion to prescription drug costs to just the general cost of healthcare in the state of Kansas, people are hurting, and I want to make sure that we actually go back in and tackle that next year.
Well, all 4 of you mentioned taxes and education in turn, so let's start maybe with those 2 areas for some issue-based questions. And so the order is falling to Chris Croft in the District 8 race, so that's where we'll begin this question. All 4 of you answer this. We've had a number of questions. So we have a question from the audience: what will you do to bring down property taxes? We have questions from readers asking about how can you address tax relief for seniors in Kansas. And so I guess in general, maybe a philosophical question: if elected or re-elected in your case, what are the tax priorities for you in 2024, and how would you go about addressing that?
Yeah, and as you said about the last tax bill, is, you know, we had it passed several times. In fact, one time unanimously, and the governor still vetoed it. It was kind of an interesting situation. And as every time we did this, we started with a number that was provided for us. And so we've tried to do this in a very comprehensive way. We said, hey, what are we allowed to cut in this process based off the expenses we're going to have? And then we will work within that number. We have a great tax chair, and he went through that process and led us all down the process, and we all voted for it. And it wasn't good enough because the goalpost moved. And the goalpost kept moving all the way to the end, and as it was already mentioned. So yeah, we're back in there about taxes. We've done something on property valuations to try to fix that. And we'll continue to work on valuations as we move forward. I think that's very important. We did get rid of the tax on Social Security. And as was mentioned, we do have our seniors that are being taxed out of their homes. We got an example of one where she had to fix her deck because she fell through it. And in the process, they had to then do a permit for it. And then it had to be expanded because it didn't meet the new regulatory requirements that are placed on by the local government. And then she had to spend $12,000 and her property valuation went up 40. That's the kind of stuff that's happening, folks, out there. It's a problem.
House District 8, staying with Pam, what would be the tax priorities for you if elected in 2024? Where would your focus be? Where do you see some relief being possible or priority for you?
Thank you. Well, first and foremost, I think we need to make sure that we have a fair and balanced tax system in the state that doesn't disproportionately harm working families. When we're considering tax cuts, we have to be very smart and methodical in our efforts so that we don't in any way jeopardize funding for our public schools. I am the former chair of the Johnson County Commission on Aging. I have worked a lot with our aging population, and I would love to see us be able to provide tax relief to our seniors. Getting rid of the tax on Social Security, the income tax on Social Security is a good start. I would love to see us be able to freeze property tax increases for our seniors and give them other types of relief. I also support increasing the exemption on residential property tax from $75,000 to $100,000. This past legislative session, they raised it from $45,000 to $75,000. I'd like us to see that go up to $100,000. There are some other options, which we can talk about.
Finish that thought, yes.
Homestead property tax relief, a program, we could expand that by expanding the current homestead exemption. And then there's some other things that we could do, like eliminating the sales tax on hygiene products and diapers and other things.
Going to the District 48 race, Dan Osman, your thoughts on what you would prioritize, additional tax cuts if you think they're needed, what would be your philosophy in approaching that issue in 2024?
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely, it starts with residential property taxes. We had a really great tax package that passed this last year, but it didn't go far enough on residential property taxes, and people are still hurting. We had a previous bill that included $100,000, and then it got shaved off in later rounds. I actually helped co-sponsor 3 different bills this last year that would have reduced residential property taxes. They were co-sponsored by at least 30 to 35 legislators, my fellow legislators. Almost 1/3 of the House wanted to see this in action, and yet all 3 of them did not make it out of committee. 2 of them did not even get a hearing. And the question is, why? Why are we not at least addressing and having discussion about things that not only people absolutely need, but we as legislators want to enact? But it goes beyond just residential property taxes. We're looking at over-the-counter medication, feminine hygiene products, and a whole lot of other necessary things that we should not be taxing here in the state.
And staying in the District 48 race, Randy Ross, this question about taxes, what would be your priority in 2024? Do you see any room for more relief or more taxes to come?
Well, first of all, we're glad that we got the tax bill through in this last legislative session. It shouldn't have taken a special session to do it. And I think the governor could have signed off on the bill that the House passed unanimously. You know how often something of that magnitude passes unanimously? I thought the governor would look at it and say, geez, every Democrat in the House voted for it. I really should take a look at it. No, I'll veto it. That's a sign of disrespect. But what we can do, if we really want to lower taxes, and I've had this discussion at the doors and people understand it, you're not going to be able to lower taxes unless you manage your budget. That is just straightforward. And now we've got a joint House-Senate committee which is looking at how can the legislature do a better job of being an active partner in establishing the budget. If we manage the budget, it makes it much easier to do tax relief.
The other issue that all 4 of you said that you hear a lot about is education, so I'll ask that question of you now too, and the order falls to Pam Shernuk in the District 8 race, but what do you see as the biggest challenges or priorities facing Kansas public schools going into 2024, and how would you address that or tackle that as a legislator?
Well, I think one of the biggest problems that we have is a threat of school vouchers being passed through our Kansas legislature. School vouchers take funding away from our public schools, and they divert it to private institutions, often with zero accountability. This weakens our public education system, particularly for schools that serve lower income and rural communities. My opponent has repeatedly supported school vouchers, which would jeopardize the strength of districts like Blue Valley. I have spent decades supporting our public schools, advocating for full funding and ensuring that every child has access to high quality education. It's important, like Mr. Osman mentioned, that we remember that the school finance formula is going to be rewritten in the coming session, and we need to elect candidates who have a track record of supporting public education and are willing to fully fund our schools and special education to the fullest extent possible.
We'll circle back around, and we've had some time to Chris Croft time to have him respond to maybe some of the specific points in Pam's answer. We'll go to the District 48 race in Dan Osman, the challenges that you see facing public education, how you would address that as a legislator if in your case reelected. And I will just say, nearing 7:45, we are going to get an announcement that the library is about to close. So if you want to pause, that happens, either you or Randy. It'll just take 10 or 15 seconds, just warning you ahead of time. But this question about education, biggest challenges you see facing public schools and how you would want to address that.
Thank you very much for your heads up. So I would say that the biggest challenge is about fully funding education, fully funding special education. The Supreme Court determined the Gannon decision nearly a decade ago, and now they've determined that it's no longer applicable. What that means is that in 2025, the legislators that you elect are the ones that are going to make the determination as to what fully funded is. And make no mistake, there are a number of legislators up there that have done special math to determine that fully funded means 50% or so. And that cannot be what we do here for the state of Kansas. It cannot be what we do here in Blue Valley. I'm supported I'm supported by two different teachers unions, as well as Stand Up Blue Valley and Aim On for Kansas Schools. I spent 6 years on a school board before coming into the legislature. I'm very invested in making sure that we have strong public education in the state of Kansas.
Randy Ross, the biggest challenges facing public schools in Kansas, how you would address that and prioritize that as a legislator?
Well, obviously, we have to start with making sure our school systems have the necessary resources, financial and other, to get the job done. And as I've said since the start of my campaign, I am for fully funding our schools. That's general and special education. But it doesn't stop there. We also have to make sure that the schools are accountable to their stakeholders. They're accountable to teachers. I've had teachers tell me, yeah, we're getting now financial resources into the classroom, but I need environmental resources. I said, well, what's that? And they say, I need an environment in which I can teach. I have a 45-minute class period, and by the time I get the class settled down, deal with some problem makers, I've got 30 minutes left. And you do that over the course of a week, and it starts...
May I have your attention, please? The library will close in 15 minutes. If you need a ride, please be sure arrangements have been made. All computers will shut
Is
down
that
at
volume
closing.
up high enough?
Please take your work to a personal device or to your email at this
Jesus.
time.
Randy Ross.
Your time already ended. And like went off.
No, continue. Finish your thought. You still have 30 more seconds.
But the main thing is, educating our children is not a political issue, and if you're a parent, you get one shot at it, right? You don't want your kids repeating grades. You want them to be advancing at the rate that they should be. And so those are some of the issues that we need to focus on, so that when our children graduate from high school with that diploma, it actually means something, and they just weren't passed through. Thank you.
And coming back to the House 8 race, this question about education, what do you see as the biggest challenges, priorities for Kansas public schools, and how you would address that?
Yeah, and also addressing.
Yeah, the school voucher point that Pam Shernuk made earlier.
Yeah, so my mom was a teacher for 35 years. I grew up in that environment, single parent, so I watched it every day. I'd sit in the back of the classroom with her, even when I was all the way up to 8th grade. And I'm a product of public schools. My kids are all product of public schools. I mean, I've signed on every time and voted every time to fully fund schools, and yet we still sit here and say that I haven't done that. It's kind of fun. I will tell you that what my concern is we have children that are in failing schools, and we have kids that have no option of how to get out of that. It's not Blue Valley's issue. Blue Valley's got great schools. We've got a great team. We've got a superintendent. But what do we do for these kids that are out there? I don't know. That was the only answer that they gave us. Give me another solution and let's talk about it. I've actually asked superintendents all around the state to give us another option as we move forward so we can focus on the kids, because that's the true opportunity for America. Education is that opportunity. That's what we give our money for, is to give these kids the education, to give them the opportunities that they so desperately seek and they need so they can succeed in this country. So from that perspective, I will always continue to be out there supporting schools, but I'm asking you guys, help us come up with good solutions. And oh, by the way, the reason we've gotten rid of the GAN thing, the legislators you sent up there, is because we fully funded the schools. So that's why it's gone.
Another question we got a lot of in emails, though no questions from in the room, but it still was a very pervasive question asked by email, and it is a hot button issue, is the issue of abortion. We have some readers who say this is a matter of trusting women and their doctors to make personal private decisions. They cite the 2022 statewide vote that also some of you have mentioned already. We also have some other readers who say there is a compelling state interest in protecting unborn life. So the question to you is, how do you balance these views on abortion and what you think the state should do with these concerns about privacy and women's rights, as well as maybe the rights of the unborn? Where do you fall personally on this, and what public policy measures would you support in regards to this? We'll start with Dan Osman in District 48.
Yes, thank you very much. I support a woman's right to choose, period. 68% of my district also agrees with me. They don't want the government in their lives making determinations, and I'm going to say that across everything. This is very clear. I think that the law of Kansas works the way that it is, and I don't wish to restrict any choice that in healthcare across the board, let alone a woman's right to choose. So yeah, that's as clear as I can make it.
Staying in the District 48 race, Randy Ross. We hear from readers on both sides of this. Your personal convictions, how will that play into whatever policy debates or debates over or limits or legislation that you might face in 2024 and beyond?
Right, thank you. Personally, and I tell voters at the door, personally I'm pro-life, but I also believe in the rule of law and the will of the people. And our Supreme Court did tell us exactly what the rule of law was by telling us what our Constitution in the state stood for. And unlike a lot of states, we've actually put it to a vote and let the people say whether or not they agreed with the state, and they did. So with those two things, what's been set up for the legislature are two very tight guardrails. And that tells them where they can and can't go. And as a legislator, I'm going to follow what the law is and what the people.
May I have your attention, please? The library will close in 10 minutes. Patrons using the computers, now is the time to submit your print jobs and save all documents.
Or Randy.
They knew you were talking.
That's right. He's got a button out there that tells us.
Hey, let him have the baby.
Yeah, finish your, yeah, of course.
Okay, so, at the end of the day, I'm going to follow the law. And the people and the courts have said where the guardrails are, and I will, that's where I'm going to go.
Going back to the District 8 race, Chris Croft, of course, very sometimes personal topic, abortion, but where do you stand on this, your personal convictions, and how would that play out in terms of debating about policy, limits, laws, restrictions on the procedure of abortion? How would you approach it?
So, I mean, look, and it was mentioned earlier, I did vote to give the people the right to choose, and they chose. So I'm good with that. That's where the people are, and that's what I'll support. You know, I talked about my mom earlier, I'll talk about it again. I was an only child. She had me at 33. She lost a lot of children up to that point in that process. I saw how hard it was on her, and I understand these are not easy decisions going through there, and I will not pretend that they're easy decisions. What I would support is an environment that supports the women that have to make these decisions and going through that process, whatever their decision is. But I also don't want to make it where there's things that would prevent them from choosing the life if that's what they so choose. So as an example, I want to go out there, and if you need care for pregnant women, education, I'm in that. We went through that when we were young couples. And I think those are great things to have, opportunities that are available, and provide those resources as we have them. I want to make sure I continue to support that process and as we move forward. And I also want to fix some of the adoptions for those that want to have the child, but want to give them to someone else that would love them and take care of them. And there's more to that, so we'll get that later.
Staying in District 8, Pam Shernuk, your thoughts on this, and, which can admittedly be a personal topic, but where would you stand as a legislator? What would your views be on these debates and policy discussions?
Thank you. First and foremost, I support a woman's right to make her own healthcare decisions, period. I strongly believe that our current laws in Kansas regarding reproductive health care, including abortion, should be protected. The Kansas Supreme Court has upheld that the right to bodily autonomy is a fundamental right, and I agree with that ruling. I'm going to say this again. My opponent voted to put the anti-abortion constitutional amendment on the ballot in August of 22 with no exception for the life of the mother, rape, or incest. 64% of District 8 voters voted no on that amendment and sent a clear message that Kansans value the right to choose. We've all seen what's happened as a result of the overturning of Roe v. Wade. There are women in parking lots bleeding out, losing reproductive capability because doctors fear that they will lose their license to practice medicine if they perform necessary life-saving procedures. If elected, I will oppose any new restrictions on abortion.
Well, I'll give Chris a chance to respond, but I mean, it's the second time you brought that up, so just say, do you accept his position that, he voted for that measure in 2022, the people spoke, the voters voted, and now he's accepting of that?
Are you, that's to me? That's to me?
Don't give him a chance to respond.
No, I do not, because he has continued to take votes. Just this past session, I think there's been more than 20 bills introduced that diminish a woman's right to make her own healthcare decisions that he has supported. Not all of them have been taken into law, but he has supported those votes.
And Chris, I'll give you a chance to respond to that particular
Yeah,
point.
particularly a lot of the bills that are introduced are in committees that never come out, and I'm not on those committees. I don't get to vote on those committees. I get to see things when they come out of the committees and they didn't come out. I don't support that, and I've already said clearly what my position is, and that's the other thing. So you don't want to trust me in this process, that's fine, but it's not going to get you very far when you're up there trying to work with people and trying to talk with people if you're going in position is that you don't trust people.
We will now go to another topic, and the order has fallen to Randy Ross on the District 48 race. And this one is also asked about a lot. I also have a couple questions up here from readers in the audience, or members of the audience, and that is guns, your positions on what some readers call gun safety. What do you stand on this issue? Are there any limits or laws or new rules that you would support if elected in 2024 that you think the state of Kansas needs in terms of guns?
Personally, yes, I'm a member of the NRA. I do own a handgun.
May I have your attention, please? The library will close in 5 minutes. Please take all materials to the checkout stations now.
Trifecta.
I will say,
win something.
It makes sense because it does every 5 minutes. I think we go through about, so I don't think I have anything against you. But yeah, start over. We just start over on that answer.
Yeah, please start.
What was the question? No, I know what the question was. Yes, as I said, I do have a handgun. I'm going to shoot that speaker. It goes off again. But, I keep it at home. It's locked. I've got a clip that's ready, but it's kept separately. So I have, all of those safety things built in. I would like to see other gun owners doing the same thing. And I think most of them do. Most of them are extremely responsible, but we do have bad actors out there who won't follow the law. And so, you know, just passing something may not encourage them to be safer within their homes, number one. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to start aggressively enforcing the laws that we do have so that people realize that there are real consequences.
In the District 8 race, Chris Croft, any gun-related bills? Some readers characterize it as gun safety, others gun control. Any gun-related bills, limits that you would see supporting, you see yourself supporting in 2024?
Yeah, well, I agree. I mean, crime is an issue, and we definitely have to enforce the laws that are on the books, and I think that's very important. But there were some other things that we did talk about, and it's about school safety on the guns specifically, because you've had other things that are brought up, so I'm going to bring this up because it wasn't brought up. We had in our budget this year for Zero Eyes. We specifically picked a company, which we don't try to do. We typically try to just have it as an RFP, a request for proposal. But we did this because we felt like there was an absolute need to get it done quickly. And this company is out there, it's expanding across the country right now, but can identify when guns are brought out in the school, in the back areas, anywhere else it's hidden, and they can do, and then they react to that, and it's done in seconds. It's an incredible program. It was vetoed. I understand why, because it was a single source, and I get that part, but there's got to be something done, and I would absolutely support something as it relates to our safe and security of our schools.
Well, since you brought up schools,
yeah,
particularly,
sure.
are there any other, I know some readers have asked, would you support arming teachers? Would you support having guns in school? Staff members carrying guns? Asking you only because you brought up schools.
No, that's fair. And so, again, from a military perspective, you know, in the military, you don't get a weapon, and it's called a weapon for a reason, because it is a weapon. You don't get it just arbitrarily. You go through training, you go through process, it's stored properly. All those things matter to me. If somebody in the school wants to carry a weapon and they're part of the administration or the leadership of the school, as long as they're trained, they're given the resources necessary to do the things, I can support that.
Staying in District 8, Pam Shernuk, your thoughts on what some readers characterize as gun safety, others as gun control, any gun-related measures, limits, restrictions, laws that you would support or see yourself supporting in 2024?
Thank you. Let me begin by first saying I'm a gun owner. I do believe in common sense gun safety reforms that protect our communities while respecting responsible gun ownership. As a candidate endorsed by both Moms Demand Action in every town for gun safety, I support measures like expanding background checks and safe storage laws to help ensure firearms are kept out of the hands of those who pose a threat to themselves and others. In contrast, my opponent is endorsed and funded by the NRA, an organization that consistently opposes even the most basic gun safety reforms. I respect the rights of law-abiding gun owners, but we cannot ignore the need for stronger gun laws. That it will help reduce gun violence and protect our children and keep our communities safe. And I might, I guess, direct this at my opponent. I believe that there was a bill introduced for safe storage in the Kansas legislature just this past year that you would not entertain.
Go ahead and directly respond to that if you would, Chris.
Well, I'm not sure how I would entertain it, but I'll go down that path on the storage issue. And you just heard it at the national level. Where does it stop when they come in there? Look, I'm all for the storage thing. My weapon is stored properly. It's going through that, and I think you should do that. But if you're going to allow the government to come into your
The library is now closed and will reopen tomorrow at 9 a.m.